Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Board of Veterinarians meeting for today, May 7th, 2026. I'd like to call us to order. We do have folks remotely with us today, so we're going to go ahead and do a roll call.
Hold on just a second. Dr. Shipman, are you already logged in? Do we have people in the waiting room?
We do not have people waiting.
Because Julie Wicker just texted me that she's in the waiting room. And I'm currently joining.
I don't have a waiting room. And I will resend her the meeting information just to make sure she has the most current.
Well, Julia Wicker said that she's in. I'm joining. I might have access or authorization to let people in. Julia Wicker from Purdue said that she's in the waiting room.
She does mean online.
Yeah.
Actually. At the hospital, right there. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I have View Lobby. I've got 3 people in here. I got Natalie in here. I got all of our people.
Hello. Good morning.
We're just trying to get everybody connected. Hang in there for a second.
No worries. Okay.
Technology is a wonderful thing. I just want to know how the weather is in Japan.
Oh, it's very clear and warm.
Beautiful. Well, welcome.
Thank
What time
you.
is it?
Yeah, what time is it?
Oh, it's 10 past 10.
PM.
10 on Thursday.
Okay, well, we'll try not to keep you up too late.
Oh, that's don't worry.
All right.
I still have 2 hours left of my birthday.
Today's your birthday?
Thank you. Yes, this is my birthday.
Tomorrow is my birthday.
Oh, really? What a
Yeah,
coincidence.
And I'm next week.
Yeah. Okay, can we restart at this point? Okay, we tried to get started a minute ago, and we're going to go ahead and restart now with a call to order for the Board of Veterinary Medicine. We're going to do a roll call to establish a quorum. So Jerry Rodenbarger, that's me. I am here. Stephen Sunbury.
Here.
Kelly Peelman.
Here.
Tracy Gillespie.
Here.
Natalie Goodwin.
Here.
I think you're good. Hi, Natalie. And Mindy Anderson. Okay. We have a quorum established. We need to adopt the agenda. We have a modified agenda in front of us. Hopefully everybody has had a chance to look at that. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion. I look for a second. Thank you. We have a second as well.
Who was that?
Yes, it was. And so do we need to roll call all of these as well?
Since Natalie's online, yes.
Okay. All right. So let's roll call accepting the agenda. Dr. Sunbury.
Aye.
Dr. Peelman.
Aye.
Dr. Gillespie.
Aye.
Natalie.
Hi.
And Mindy. Aye. Excellent. Okay, the agenda has been adopted. You also have the minutes from our last meeting, January 29th of 26, before you. Do we have any additions or corrections to those minutes? I think actually Dr. Peelman was 2 minutes late instead of 1 minute late for the start of that last meeting, maybe, I'm not sure. But we're going to give her 1 minute, so that would be the only thing I had. Any question of, otherwise, anyone else, anything? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from the January 29th meeting. Oh, come on, Kelly.
I move to adopt minutes.
Thank you very much. I have a motion on the floor. I need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. All those in favor, Dr. Sunbury?
Aye.
Dr. Peelman?
Aye.
Dr. Gillespie?
Aye.
Natalie Goodwin?
Aye.
And Mindy Anderson?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We are not needing our court reporter today, so we will not be swearing our court reporter in. So we can move on to personal appearances. And let's start with our connection in Japan. Would you please pronounce your name for me so I don't mess that up?
Sure. Okay. Fumie Shiraki. Fumie.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you give us a little bit of background? It's my understanding that, I haven't my notes pulled up here, but from my memory, that your license with us expired in 2014, I think.
Yes,
Because
yes.
you were taking the time to raise your children, which I think is
Sure, yes.
fantastic. Would you be willing to tell us a little bit about your children?
Okay. Okay. I have 3 boys, and one is 16, and one is in a high school and junior high and elementary school. So 3 boys. Okay. And I currently work for Osaka Metropolitan University Veterinary Medical Center. And as a head veterinary technician in the oncology department. And I graduated from Purdue with my bachelor's degree in 2002. And after graduation, I worked for a private practice in New York for about a year and half month. A year and a half. After returning to Japan, I started working. I worked for a private practice in Tokyo for 3 years, and I moved to Osaka due to my husband's job relocation. And then I worked. I started working at my current workplace in 2009. And then I stepped away from clinical field when I had my second son, which is in 2012. And that was also the last time I renewed my license. And I didn't renew my license because it was very hard to complete my CE requirements by attending in-person conferences in the United States. So, and then later I became a mother of 3 boys, and which made it even more difficult for me to return to clinical practice.
Okay. Sounds like you've been busy.
Yes.
Why do you want to have a license in Indiana?
Yeah.
If I might ask.
Oh, okay. I returned to my current working place 5 years ago, and several things happened over the last 5 years. And I met 3 veterinarians I worked with, went to Purdue, and 2 of them are residents there now. And also, I had the opportunity we connect with Dr. Knapp from Purdue at the 2024 World Veterinary Cancer Congress in Tokyo. And also, one of my friends from Purdue, a former classmate from Purdue, gave me the opportunity to attend a Hills Global Symposium in Phoenix last year. And those experiences inspired me to reinstate my license because I had regretted not renewing my license. So that's why I want to reinstate my license.
Okay, well, we've seen plenty of CE come across, and you've
Yeah.
done a wonderful job of completing that. Will you come visit us in Indiana? Is that
Sure.
a plan?
Yeah, I would love to.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Questions from the board? Or any comments?
I applaud you for the amount of hours in the short amount of time, plus everything else that you're doing. So, you're amazing.
My daughter has 2 boys that
Okay.
are in, like, I don't know, 4 sports each, and then there's school and everything.
Wow.
So I know
Uh-huh.
how she's chasing around
Uh-huh.
everywhere with all that she's doing. So I can't imagine how those 3 young men are keeping you busy.
How old are they?
Well, they're just 9 and 7, but
Uh-huh.
it's ridiculous that they're already on travel teams and doing all kinds of things like that. So,
Wow.
and she works full time. So it's
Wow, that's
it's kind of crazy.
so bad.
But
Yeah, I understand that.
I know exactly why
Mhm.
you took a bit of a pause. And so, thoughts about reissuing licensure from the board.
Make a motion that we allow it.
I second.
Excellent. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Let's roll call this. Dr. Sunbury?
Aye.
Dr. Peelman?
Aye.
Dr. Gillespie?
Aye.
Natalie?
Aye.
Thank you. And Mindy?
Aye.
Excellent. And I vote aye as well. This
Thank you very much.
wonderful person will take care of you and.
Thank you. I will see you in a moment.
Not too soon.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, and
Thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much
Happy
for-
birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking time for me.
Wonderful. It was great talking with you. I mean,
Thank
we
you.
talk with folks from Japan every week, so.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Not hardly, so.
Gotta keep that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You have a great day.
Dr. Rachel, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. You're not overseas, are you?
No, I'm over in Illinois.
Oh, just as wonderful.
Oh,
Just as
beautiful,
wonderful.
beautiful.
So I understand that you have licensure in both Minnesota and Illinois. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And are you living in southern Indiana at this point?
No, I am living in the Chicagoland area.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. This, I was struck. What, I thought I saw something that said something about Sandwich, Indiana.
Oh, it's Sandwich, Illinois.
Okay, did it say Indiana or did I miss that? Regardless, okay, so is that where your home is? Or you're
That's
in
where I'm.
Chicago?
Yeah, I've been here for almost 20 years. I'm originally
Okay.
from Minnesota.
I'm sorry,
From Minnesota.
from Minnesota. Okay. Only because I read all of your bio information, can you tell us a little bit about the aspects surrounding your probation way back when?
Sure. So at the time, the practice that I was at, not everybody had a DEA license, and the people that didn't have a DEA license would ask those who were licensed if they needed a controlled substance prescription written. And at the time, this was my first job after school, and I know a lot more now about how their practices were not ideal. And one of my coworkers, had asked me to write some prescriptions for cases, and I did not do my due diligence and look at medical records, which I should have. And it turns out, long story short, he was using drugs. He ended up attempting suicide in the practice using Euthazol. And when that came out, obviously there was an investigation, and they found these prescriptions and looked into everything. And it turns out that, again, he had been taking things, and I had not, like I said, done my due diligence in looking at records and had believed him when he needed the prescriptions. And that's how that all came about.
Okay. And you had your period of probation, and then that was lifted, and so your license in Minnesota and in Illinois is free and clear. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Tell me what you're doing now.
Until January, I was working at one of the largest animal shelters here in the Chicagoland area, which was great, but also very draining. And so since February, I have been working for Indie Vets doing short-term relief work in the area, working with multiple clinics. And it's been really great. And I'm getting to see a lot of different practices and meet a lot of different people and learn a lot of stuff. So I'm really enjoying that.
And where are you doing that?
It's in the Chicagoland area now. The reason why I applied for Indiana licensure is my boyfriend lives in Indianapolis. We've been together for about 2 years, and we're tired of doing the long distance thing. And so my plan, hopefully, is to move to Indiana and continue working for Indie Vets. When I first moved, helping do relief work for practices in the Indianapolis area.
Okay. And are you hoping to reside in the Indy area then, I'm assuming?
Yes, that is the plan. My plan is to sell my house here and move to Indy full time.
Okay. Questions from the board?
I'm just going to ask the Health Professional Services Program. I'm not familiar with that, but I assume that was, well, I won't assume. Can you tell us what that was, what that entailed?
Yeah, so I was kind of involved in that, but it turned out I didn't really need to be because I wasn't using any substances. But basically, it's a monitoring program where you report regularly about your work activity, how you've been doing, have you been seeing a therapist or counselor, all that kind of stuff. And so I did that, sent in regular reports and things like that. I think it's a program for licensed professionals to get help that they need, and still remain under the supervision of the board so they can continue to practice.
That was my assumption, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, from a timing perspective, we're looking at an issue that was investigated and became problematic in 2007. Is that correct? As I remember?
That's correct.
Okay. And here we are now in 26. So I'm just trying to kind of put the timeline in perspective here. I think I'm ready to entertain a motion from someone, unless we need to ask more questions.
When I read through the laws, it's the exam. That seemed optional to me. Is that how you see it?
What?
The exam, whether she needs to take a state exam or not.
What state exam? The jurisprudence exam?
Yeah. So,
She's taking.
I did take that.
January.
Yeah.
Okay. You've taken it, good.
Yep, I did take it. Mhm.
Okay, any other concerns before we, my opinion is, I think I'm comfortable having us go ahead and issue licensure before we vote. If anyone feels contrary to that, I'd entertain that information. Otherwise, I'd love to hear a motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to allow licensure in Indiana. Yes, and we have a second. Wonderful. Let's roll call this. Dr. Sunbury.
Aye.
Dr. Peelman.
Aye.
Dr. Gillespie.
Aye.
Natalie. Natalie,
Aye.
thank you. And Mindy.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
The reason I brought up the state exam because when I read through all the laws, it seemed optional to me. It'd be up to the board to decide whether she should take it or not, so.
So she has already, so we're good to go there. I believe you'll be getting information from our board director and you'll be good to go.
Wonderful. Thank you
Your
so much.
license has been issued.
As a matter of fact, your license has already been issued.
Amazing.
And your address was Sandwich, Indiana, so I switched it to Illinois.
Great. Thank you so much.
And you thought that I just didn't know what I was talking about. Which is accurate, but regardless, I actually can read. So,
I believe you.
all right.
I believe you.
have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye-bye.
State.
Okay. That takes care of our personal appearances for the day. Now we're going to move into what was an administrative hearing, but now needs to be a discussion and a vote on a proposed settlement agreement for Dr. Terrence Kaiser, license number 240033A, cause number 2025 BB0007. I hope everyone has reviewed both the initial complaint and then the proposed settlement agreement. Do you want to go through the commentary and the thoughts on this, or do you want me to go ahead and do that?
No, you guys can have a discussion on it and then vote after the discussion.
Okay. Well, the settlement that came before us involved a 1-year probation with no surgery on orthopedics of any kind, and 6 hours, I think, of CE with regard to proper notes and record keeping and that sort of thing. And there are some concerns with regard to that. So after the 1 year with only record keeping CE, Dr. Kaiser would be allowed to come off of probation. And if I'm not saying this correctly, please somebody jump in and help me. And at that point, then he could go potentially right back to doing orthopedic procedures and the type of thing that he got into a little bit of trouble with. So it is felt that we need to address the surgical inadequacies as well and have significant CE in that area. If we're to do that, we're going to need to vote to reject this PSA and send it back. Does that sound fairly accurate? Okay.
I think the probation, the way it's written, and we typically do it this way, is that they can request to come off after X amount of time, and in this case, it is in 1 year. It's not automatic that just because they request to come off of probation that we're going to allow that, but
Well, however, if he has
If he has done
completed
his
his CE and done everything that is required of him,
then we would have a hard time
Kinda tough.
saying no more. Yeah, we can't really, it would be difficult to say you're still on probation, and you can still not do orthopedic surgeries if we don't have something that has to be accomplished.
Yeah, so
In
under
order to
statute, in
train.
order to come off of probation or to modify probation, the respondent or licensee has to remedy whatever defect caused the probation in the first place. And without CE or mentoring or whatever, there's no avenue for him to remedy that surgical aspect of it. There's the piece for the record keeping, but not for the surgical piece. And the board doesn't have the authority to limit his practice indefinitely. Only under the probation.
I mean, I talked previously about quality of care and what's considered to be acceptable these days, and a intra-articular fracture pretty much ought to be taken care of by a board-certified surgeon if possible, and those kind of things, but we can't dictate that kind of thing under his licensure. And so we have to, at least in my opinion, get something in there that is going to provide a lot of additional education for him in that area, in that surgical area. And quite frankly, he may elect to keep his license, not do what we're going to ask of him in terms of CE, like maybe a 20-hour wet lab on orthopedic or something along those lines, and elect to just maintain his license on probation and not do orthopedics and move forward that way. But at least we've provided an avenue to try to upgrade his skills to where he could do that if he wanted to, should he elect to go that route. Kelly, thoughts?
I agree with you that CE should be done. It's unfortunate that we can't just say stop orthopedic surgeries because of the degree with which these were made. But what kind of orthopedic surgery wet labs are even offered on a specialty that I pursued?
So we looked preliminarily at like Western Leviticus group, and they very much have orthopedic specific fracture repair wet labs in that 20-hour range. And they offer them multiple times a year at multiple locations, it seems. And that's just looking at one offering. Obviously, there's more than one offering that could be.
In Ohio, they used to do that. I don't know if they still do anyway, Midwest or whatever they call the Ohio one. They always had wet labs for orthopedics there too.
Would it be an option to have whoever is conducting that lab, whoever's supervising him, to be able to sign off then on his competency and skills? You can attend the lab, but if you're not.
I don't know how much grading you get following those labs, quite honestly. The ones that I've participated in.
Participation.
So you were there, yeah, you get a participation ribbon.
Yeah.
So.
What about mentorship post-education? Is that an option?
I'm
It could be a condition, yes.
I mean, it certainly could be. I was just putting myself in his place or thinking about his position in his practice life. And I mean, he's a 1971 graduate from the veterinary college, and that has to put him at 79 plus or minus from an age perspective. And I just don't know how much he's going to want to buy into having someone standing over him watching him do a procedure. And I don't want to put myself in his position per se, but
That'll be his decision.
I know, I understand. I just questioned that a little bit.
I do believe when I checked last time, there was not a boarded surgeon with 50 or 120 miles of where he's located. I think Fort Wayne was maybe the closest.
Yeah, he's in Goshen.
He's in
Right.
Goshen, so like if it was to be a mentorship by someone who is a board surgeon,
Right.
It wouldn't be
The
somebody close.
proximity, just geographically where this.
Well, and I'm trying to be
But yeah.
sensitive to the fact that not every client
Right.
can afford a
Yes.
board certified specialist to do
Right.
surgery, and, obviously that factors into it, but I don't believe there was any offering and decline of that option from this client, so.
Well, had there been appropriate medical records, there probably was some information.
But in the care after too.
I think, and the AG's office can fill us in, I think he's willing to not do orthopedic surgery for the rest of his career, and that's fine. To the extent that he's willing to do that, we just need to have an order from the board that's legal. And so if one of these wet labs is cost prohibitive, or even the monitoring is not something that he wants to engage in, he can just stay on probation until he retires.
But what we decide on a case like this could affect what we do in the future. And it may be somebody who is a new grad who has their whole career in front of them that is going, so trying to think it through and decide what makes sense to remedy the situation. We need to be
I mean,
thinking of
wet
the
labs
picture.
are great, but they are not a substitute for the real deal. And, I mean, if I was doing a wet lab and signing off on someone in that scenario, I don't know that I would say that can translate to the live animal in the real situation, in the environment they have in their surgery suite, and the tools and the equipment that they're going to use. I would be reluctant to sign off my credentials and say, this person is qualified now based on their time with me to do that. I would feel strongly about some follow-up, whether that's mentorship afterwards, somebody being in the OR with them. But I get the limitations of the location and all of that, and the cost prohibitiveness of it, but.
Could we ask for records? Could he do this plus the CE and then?
Yeah, so it contemplates that.
Yeah.
I just think that, that paragraph needs to be fleshed out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And we can, provide the parties with a sample of one that we've done previously with kind of like a rotation where he would send records quarterly to us.
And in a case like that, not to jump in, but the last one we had, I selected one or two dates randomly, and then they had to pull the file. It's not like he could provide us a wonderful single record of his choice. We'll get to have him go back a month back or 6 weeks or whatever and just send us what he's got on such and such a case on that day. Because the last time the doctor would send us his schedule for the day for like a 3-week time frame, and I'd go through and say, okay, Mrs. Jones and Fluffy, send us that one, and then another one, and we would see a random sampling of what his record keeping was.
I like that, but what I was getting at was if he decided, so he comes up this next year, if he decides and he wants to do orthopedic surgeries, then that agreement is for the next year, those orthopedic cases and follow-ups and all that, those records come to us every quarter. So we can see if things are going well and it doesn't seem like there's any complaints or major
Oh, if
problems. If he's gonna go back into these things.
he would have to stay on probation
Yes.
for you guys to
Yes.
to monitor.
Yeah, we can't dictate anything if they're off of probation.
Right.
She's saying it's part of the probation.
Right, no, I get it, right?
Yeah.
First, we need to give him that avenue to get back into orthopedics,
Right.
and that needs to be some form of CE,
So then he
with
could request
potentially with mentorship.
modification instead of withdrawal.
In order to be able to.
Yeah, so you guys would take the limitation off and then add new a new order that says that he would provide certain records or whatever you guys wanted to come up with at that time. And then he could do that for another period of time.
So would the mentorship be best placed at the modification, since he's prohibited, he could be prohibited in the short term, or?
As much as I like the sound of mentorship, I don't know.
Well, wait,
how
he
that-
can't do it though.
I'm not
Unless he
thinking
gets offered.
that.
He-
Right,
He can't do it at all. So what's the point of having a mentor?
right. Yeah, I don't think the mentor thing sounds practical.
I think we need to create aggressive CE in orthopedics and send it back with that requirement. And then when that's taken care of, we can modify the probation and move further if we need to.
To your point with the undergrad, that would be a good fit. So there are different factors there that we would take into consideration.
Final thoughts? Mindy? Anything else you want to offer us? I was looking over here, I didn't want to.
No.
Natalie, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No.
Okay, short, succinct.
So then the vote would be just to accept or reject the agreement as written today.
Which we are gonna reject because it doesn't have the CE.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor to reject the proposed settlement agreement. Need a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Let's vote. Dr. Sunbury,
Aye to reject.
voting to reject, correct. Dr. Peelman,
Aye.
Dr. Gillespie.
Aye.
Natalie,
Aye.
thank you. And Mindy?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay. That appears to be taken care of at this point.
So they should recommend to that. Make sure this good.
Yeah.
I mean, the AG's office is here. and
Heard the discussion.
Heard the discussion. And we can provide information on the record keeping that we've done in the past, and we can also provide information on wet labs. If he wants to do it.
Speaking of the AG's office, I think we're at the report from the Attorney General's office. Are we not?
We are.
We are.
Okay,
Good morning.
good morning. Level 6. So, okay, the average age of investigative file right now is a little over 9 months. And then our total investigative files that are open are 52. The investigative file resolution from the first quarter, we were able to resolve 27 that came through without going further, like putting them through a litigation track. So that was kind of like no sufficient evidence to prove, or we didn't find any violation occurring. So we're able to close out quite a bit before we bring them before the board. And then average age of litigation file is just under 9 months. And then we've got 17 open litigation files right now. And I sent the report over to Brittany so she can
Is it
circulate.
different than the one that was sent over earlier this week?
Oh, probably not.
Okay. Sorry about the additional work for you with regard to the last case, but
Oh, no, it's okay.
unfortunately, that's the way that is. So, anything else you want to offer us?
No, that's all, unless you guys have questions.
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are down to discussion items. And the first thing on the discussion items is the VTNA language issue. And so hopefully everybody has read a little something on that.
So yeah, the AAVSB has asked all the member boards to complete a survey, a essentially whether if the BTE were offered in Spanish, which would be, it would be a side-by-side English and Spanish, is translated into Spanish for the test takers, if Indiana would accept the exam score, pass an exam score. So right now, I just want to get a gauge of where the board is. We don't have a rule or anything on it. For the board, we are checking to ensure that the state generally doesn't have a statute on it. But the purpose of this discussion is just, I will fill out the survey on behalf of the board, and it's due, I think, at the end of the month, so.
Yeah, I scrolled through it, at least.
Did you?
Look at the questions, but since there wasn't any Spanish translation, I really couldn't move forward.
Are you fluent in Spanish?
See,
No.
that's better. Anyway, I'm having a hard time seeing that the knowledge conveyed would be any different, whether it was the questions were read in Spanish or whether they were provided in English or both. And so scoring effectively, I don't see how it would change that. Am I superficial in thinking through that, or?
And the reports would be in English, and we probably would not even know whether they took it in Spanish.
My concern is that they are not fluent in medical speak in English, and they're practicing in a primarily English-speaking environment. Can we, for my graduates, I am concerned about, my goal is to develop practice-ready technicians. If they can't understand what the doctors are telling them, what their clients are talking to them in medical speak, which is what the VTNE is, assessing, is are they practice-ready? Is that putting them behind?
I think it's really a technical translation issue and not really that they can't speak fluent English. It's the reading comprehension, and we get a lot of people who are failing the NAVLE and the VTNE because there just aren't words in English that translate into Spanish, so that's the test taking part of it. Dr. Shipman and I went to kind of a little dinner about it was more the NAVLE, but the NAVLE is already given in French. And
Because the Canadian provinces use NAVLE as well, so they do operate.
and so and so does Mexico, but right now the NAVLE and the VTNE are not yet translated into Spanish.
Which takes me to your point to highly Spanish-speaking areas or whatever, where having someone do well on the test and pass and be able to go there and be able to translate and kind of be bilingual is, that would be a benefit, I would think. And so.
And they still
That's
have
kind of
to
what I was
graduate from an ABMA accredited program. So it would, well, I don't know if any of them are solely in Spanish. I don't think that.
We don't have any translation, and that's where I guess I was a little confused too. If their entire education is in English, they should be able to take an exam, a national exam in English, if that's how they've been taught all the way through. And so that's just where, that was just a thought that I had, is are they going to be able to speak and perform tasks that are asked of them in English? I don't know, that was just a thought.
I guess I think there's a lot more test anxiety nowadays than what I used to remember, and I just wonder if that plays into it too. It's like you said, this is more about a test taking versus true knowledge-based information. And I think the ability to communicate with your team or your doctor, well, that's not the job of the NAVLE or the VTNE, that's the job of the interview and those sorts of things. If there's that much of a communication barrier, I don't think they would graduate with their program, I think. So I guess I feel like for some people that would be a comfort to be able to, when they're not sure, because you read test questions and you're like, oh, what are they trying to tell me? And if it's not necessarily your native tongue, it might be nice to read that in
And it is side by side,
Right.
So to be able to, they can probably read it in English, but if there's stuff, they can confirm.
And I'm guessing that doesn't allow additional time, right? So you're probably still answering 90% of the questions in English, it's just you might get hung up on some questions, because if you stood there and read both, I think you'd time out on those tests.
One thought, how about like French speaking students or German speaking students, and that puts them at an unfair advantage because they don't have that option.
Yeah, like where do you draw the line?
Well, I don't know if that's up to us. It's going, they're seeing if it's going to be available in Spanish, and we're just not preventing it. If the people who make the test want to offer it in German or Spanish or Russian or Arabic, they can, and then we would have that conversation.
Clarence, I think your point's good. Mindy, yours is real good as well. But I think our key is just to say, hey, is it okay to have this in Spanish sitting beside there at this point? And I don't think we have any negativity that's come up with regard to if it's going to be problematic being on the test, sitting there beside having it in the other language. And I don't think it will be. But I was thinking the same thoughts that you were with regard to, you know, and if they can't speak the native language, what are they doing, you know, type of thing. But it's a different story.
We recently had 2 graduates from Mexico, an ABMA accredited program at the time that they graduated. All of their documentation was in
Yes.
Spanish, and their education was provided in Spanish, I'm assuming, since everything was in Spanish. And they had to provide translated transcripts, and they had passed the NAVLE. It took them five or six tries to pass the NAVLE just because of the language barrier, I'm sure. But we don't have any prohibition against that program, and it's an ABMA accredited program, so.
Do we need to vote on this, or can we just say, yeah, go ahead?
Yeah, I mean,
We're
I'm
good.
just filling out the questionnaire or the survey, and,
Well, you have to have a
You don't-
tenor of what our thinking is.
right, I mean,
so-
yeah, just tell me what you guys, it's, you
Well,
wanna vote. you
real quick, is anybody opposed to the Spanish translation being side by side?
I have the same dilemma that has been brought up, that, you know, native tongue. But then thinking of the positives and I hadn't thought about the test anxiety and whatnot, when it's not your first language potentially. But I'm also thinking about in my practice, we're having a larger and larger Hispanic population, and boy, having someone fluent working for us would be great, but I'm not going to hire someone that is not fluent in English as well. So that kind of comes down to the practices. So my final thought process was, I think it's a positive.
I think too, for our programs, you know, we are graded on our retaining pass rates. And so that's the plus side is this might help our retaining, especially that program that you're referencing,
Yeah.
like that's really going to help them with their first time pass rates. So yeah, I mean, I think it's worth a try and we can see what happens. I mean, I guess there's nothing to say we can't revisit it, right? If we are seeing that we're having an increase, which I'll probably be one of the first to hear if my
Right.
graduates are going into practice and can't communicate.
And this vote doesn't mean that we are going to start accepting them. They just want to get an idea of whether it's worth it to move forward with offering the test in Spanish. There are some states that strictly prohibit it. And our general counsel is also looking into making sure that our state, in some other law that we're not that familiar with right now, doesn't prohibit it as well. If the Practice Act currently doesn't prohibit it.
And we
For
would
sure, but
decide on the state exam, right? Each state would have their own jurisprudence exam. to be
For now.
able to offer.
A few months ago, the board did agree that we were going to get rid of it, but that rulemaking is still in process.
Oh, sorry.
It's a process.
okay, we're good there?
Yep.
All right, B on our discussion is the CE audit and civil penalties.
And so if you saw in my report that the CE audits for both veterinarians and RVTs will start hopefully next week on Friday on the 15th, but sometime between the 15th and the 30th. We do that in conjunction with IPLA's IT group because they pull the names randomly through the software that we use for licensing.
Okay.
We're gonna do the same percentage of DVMs and RVTs that we did 2 years ago. The only thing.
Which was?
It was like, so by statute, it has to be like more than 1% and less than 10%. So it's like just almost 10% of both, I think. So it'd be like 250 DVMs and 175. Now, because we have more DVMs now than we did 2 years ago, because we're almost back up to 3,000.
Now, the penalties I saw were from a slap on the wrist and no money to up to $1,000.
Yeah, by statute. So if you pull out the beautiful cardstock, there's one that says disciplinary sanctions, and on the other side, it has our disciplinary fees and our civil penalties. These are new rules that went into effect March 27th that you guys, approved. The disciplinary fines and the civil penalties we had to do per statute. And the minimum fine is $0 up to $1,000 by statute. And then the rule contemplates the general criteria for assessing the civil penalty with mitigating factors and aggravating factors. Because I need to have that penalty in mind before the July 30th board meeting, I need to know now what those penalties are going to be moving forward. And Dr. Shipman and I worked on that chart, and then Dr. Shipman made the flow chart that is like the blue and gold.
And very nice, I might add. Little brown nose in there.
For you and him.
Yes.
So for everyone, but including our new board members, the process, and Dr. Shipman doing the flow sheet is very helpful. The first notice will go out by the end of the month. And that just says, hey, you've been randomly selected to participate in the audit. So for RVTs, they have to do 16 hours. They'll upload, they can upload it or send it by mail. The completion, their certificates of completion for those hours will count them. They'll get a success letter, or if they only have 8 hours, then they will get a notice of non-compliance. If they don't provide, so the first notice is 60 days, and then if they don't respond and upload anything within that 60 days, then they'll get a second notice, and they'll have 30 days to upload. If they don't upload anything, then they'll get a notice of non-compliance, and it'll say, hey, you have 21 days to respond to either contest and send in your 16 hours, and they would have to show that they had all of those 16 hours prior to, well, by the time that they renewed their license. So for RVTs, it would be January 1st of 2026 was the deadline for them to complete their CE. If that's the case, they get a success letter, we're done with that. If they don't, then I will need to issue, so for the notice of non-compliance, I will have to issue a civil penalty, a letter, as they're not in compliance, and that they have 6 months to complete the remaining 8 hours of CE, and that they have to pay a civil penalty of whatever we decide today, and they have to pay that within 21 days. So if they pay it within 21 days, awesome, they still have 6 months to do the CE, the remaining 8 hours. If they don't pay within 21 days, their license is automatically suspended until they pay it. And so if they pay it within 6 months, then their license will be reinstated, and then they still have the remaining time to complete those 8 hours of CE. If they don't complete the CE within that time, then their license would be suspended again. And the same process for veterinarians, just a different amount of hours and a different penalty because they're gonna be a little bit higher.
And there's not double dipping, right? So completing CE hours for an audit that you were behind on can't count for the current licensure period.
Right.
CE.
Now, do
So,
we still, to a degree, base the fine, or do you base the fine? I saw the mitigating factors there, but like if they have half of their CE, then their fine may only be half of what it otherwise would be, or?
yeah, so Dr. Shipman and I went through this at length, trying to assess what we thought would be a good penalty, including mitigating and aggravating factors in the general criteria and trying to base it off of what happened, like what you guys decided last time. And it was, we decided $25 per credit hour short for veterinarians, and then $15 an hour for every hour short. And it comes out to be about the same as
That's what
what
we
you guys
talked about,
did before. It's just easier to count
Yeah.
instead of like rounding up, and then the amount per hour is a little bit higher, just to get it to the max or close to the max for, at least for DVMs, just because of the deterrent factor.
40 times 25 is $1,000.
Yeah, but then only going to 240 for RVTs because of the ability to pay. I mean, the ability to pay $1,000 would be wild for other hours, plus there's only 16 hours, so it would be a lot more per hour than the DVMs.
Okay. Question, not to bring up a potential sore subject, but just for clarification, on the first and second notices, are those emailed currently?
They will be emailed. By statute, the notice of noncompliance goes out by certified mail to whatever address they have on file with us. And then they have like 30 days, essentially. I mean, they have the 21 days, but they also really will have between 30 and 45 days for us to actually move forward with a lot of this stuff. But we can also reach out to them. The issue is if they don't get the email and they get the certified mail, that's when they're gonna say, wait a minute, I have it, and send it to us. Because they have the option to ask for review. I don't think that the statute was, I don't think that we did it necessarily giving them the option right away to dispute it and say, no, I have these hours done. And they had them completed previously prior to the renewal date. It was kind of like an afterthought at the end of the notice of noncompliance. So the email issue, I don't think will be an issue as long as they appeal or they ask for review. And then, but if we have someone who, like, before we suspend them, we can reach out to them if that's what you want.
I bring this up because this past renewal year, we had several that said they never got the notice that they were being audited, and this and that, and it was emailed. And they said, well, I don't use that email or junk file, but it's the email that they have on their license. So and so there was lots of excuses about not receiving the email. So that's why I wanted to kind of clarify.
But at the
this way,
same time,
the backing,
yeah, but at the same time, there were only a couple of them.
Yeah.
Out of a couple hundred. And I know that when we did renewals, I had several veterinarians asking me for receipts, and it appeared that they had been generated emails, but they hadn't.
So the way this is, with the notice of noncompliance, that is the certified letter. So as you're saying, even if they didn't, they're still gonna be okay if they have done it. They're still not gonna be on loose license.
And if it's somebody that we know is like, why aren't they responding? Or any of them, you know, we could pick up the phone and call them. I mean, we can find people.
Find people.
I've got people for that.
Some see, that's all
Gets
I
me
can
scared.
You done?
I like it, I think this is a lot more straightforward and easier to follow through.
It's still the same statute. We just went through it multiple
In my
times
mind,
working on
It's,
this.
now it's understandable.
And this is really good.
Pretty amazing. Nice sheets.
And I want you guys to keep the card stock in your green folders, or at least bring it back every time, because we're gonna wanna look at it when we do administrative hearings and discipline. That way you know what the available discipline is and what the available fees are, now that we can do fees, fines, and disciplines.
Need to catch your breath for a minute? Anybody need a break?
Are you guys okay with the 25 per hour for veterinarians and the
Well, that makes
15
sense to
per
me.
hour?
I mean, that, the math works on that, so I think that's great.
Yeah, then let's take a break.
All right, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. Is that enough for everybody? Awesome.
Yeah, it takes.
Okay, and we are back. And we're ready to discuss, under discussion, rulemaking, an overview and a refresher. It's lots of pages.
You're running this.
No, I don't think so. This is right up your alley.
No, I just want to make sure I can get it.
Oh.
On the big screen.
Well, I don't need my glasses for that.
Okay. I need my computers. Okay, so we're gonna do this rulemaking telemedicine overview and refresher because we have the new members on our board. I know, Dr. Gillespie, you're familiar with some rulemaking because of your previous board experience. Do you have any rulemaking experience? Okay, so the Practice Act is our Title 25, and it's established by legislation. These are statutes, these are the laws that the General Assembly puts in place. The board doesn't really have any say in that. Administrative rules, though, are adopted by the board. This is the 888 IAC administrative rules that you'll see sometimes. The General Assembly has explicitly given the board the authority to make rules governing veterinary medicine for certain areas. It's pretty broad authority. We have explicit authority for, like continuing education, but then you have broad authority that essentially says establish rules to govern the profession. So, it's extremely broad in some cases. The rulemaking process can be pretty lengthy. We start with like behind the scenes with me doing research and then working in conjunction with Dr. Shipman and some of the other folks here at BOA and coming up with ideas on how to modernize and refresh our rules because most of the rules have not been updated in at least 20 years. I think, Lisa, you probably were in charge when the last time the rules were updated, with the exception of rules 3 and 10, because we recently got those established and effective in March. But that process took a solid year from beginning to in the law. So the rules have the same effect of the law. You just get to them in a different avenue. The initiative for the board, 2025 to 2029, is to go through and look at all of the other rules. So we have 12 rules. We've already done 3 and 10. We could revisit 3 and 10 if we needed to, but I don't think we will.
They're great. 3 and 10 are
Um,
My
So-
favorites,
What do you say?
my favorites.
Rule 5's never getting done. So this is just a list of all the rules that are in place today. The convictions of concern was a new rule that was established in 2023. And that was, I think, by statute, they thought that they had to establish it. We probably won't change anything in that. If anything, we may repeal it, but TBD. And just so Mindy and Dr. Gillespie, so you know, the board we already have kind of like a model rule or idea for all of these rules. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 that the board has already seen. And for everybody, we may be pushing a rule package through on those just to get them going because, like the inactive status of license rule really needs to get moving, and then we removed the 5 years of practice from the statute. And so we need to get rid of that rule that kind of, well, is irrelevant now. So you guys may see that in July, October. But then we have Rule 5, which is the standards of practice that is going to keep coming back until we get it ready to go. And then Rule 4 on veterinary practice facilities, you may see something about that, at least preliminarily in July, October. We've been working on that as well. And the AAVSB is coming up with, they have a draft model rule for practice facilities that we'll be voting on in September at the annual meeting. So you guys will at minimum see the AAVSB's model rule or draft in July to discuss or not or. Well, this was the rules on fees, fines, and civil penalties that we did, and continuing education that were all in effect March 27th this year. We just modernized the fees to make them equitable with what we were already doing. The fines and civil penalties are established by statute. However, we were required to adopt these rules under another statute that required all of these fees to include mitigating and aggravating factors and have them included in our rules. And we could not issue fines or civil penalties until this went into effect. And so this is why the audits are now moving forward. Typically, we would have started them in November for DVMs and probably February for RVTs, just like 30 days after the renewal period. But because we couldn't issue any civil penalties until March 27th, we're doing that now. So with Rule 10, the continuing education board revised the requirements for reporting. So they provided additional ways to obtain CE credits, added exemptions for individuals enrolled in certain educational programs, like residents at Purdue. Some of them do go ahead and get licensed, even though they don't have to, but they would maybe need the CE. They no longer have to have that. And then we also said that if you're in your first renewal term, you don't have to have CE, because before it was like your first year, and then that was confusing, well, what's a year? And so now it's just that first renewal cycle, whether it's 2 years or a year, because of the way, it falls with graduation. No CE. Clarified which programs are pre-approved as CE providers. Removed the self-study approval requirements, so that fiction of 20 hours of self-study and the 10 hours for DVMs and the 10 hours for RVTs is no longer in the rule. It wasn't 20 hours and 10 hours in the rule anyway. It was only 8 and 4. And we made it clear that the method for obtaining CE, that there's no requirement. So you can obtain all 40 of your hours as a DVM on demand, as long as it's approved. So rates approved, AVMA approved, IVMA approved, any other states equivalent VMA, other veterinary colleges, government, FDA, DEA, so BOA. So we've got that. The hours stay the same, 40 hours every 2 years for DVM, 16 hours every 2 years for RVTs. And then the CE audit, we added a rule that just increased the transparency of the audit process, because not everybody looks at the statute, and it's not in the Practice Act. It's in Title 25. So Title 25 encompasses all of those professional regulations for all the professions and occupations, like optometry and nursing and plumbers and cosmetology. So most people look at our website and just go to the Practice Act or the rules for the board and don't realize that there's other statutes out there that actually they have that control how they practice. Any questions, comments, concerns about this? Lisa?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the self-study, is there still some kind of test requirement at the end, or they can watch the webinar and call it good?
Because a webinar isn't actually self-study.
Okay, what about reading a white paper?
If you're providing them with a CE certificate, that's all you need to do.
But if it doesn't come with a CE certificate.
Because you're already an approved sponsor. The reason for doing the self-study was because folks were reading magazines, I think,
Way back in the
before,
day.
and filling out a little
Question.
Quizlet. And nobody was doing anything with it. So if you want to require a quiz, you can. But you're already an approved organization, so as long as they have that CE or certificate from you, then we don't need anything else. Now, if they want to get CE or self-study by doing a review of some kind, they can still apply for it. It's just not an automatic 10 hours. Does that make sense? Kind of. You don't need permission though, because you are an approved organization.
Right, but if they read a white paper, how do we know, then they tell us they read it or they answer the question? You see what I'm saying?
That's up to you.
Got it, okay.
Yeah,
It's not a requirement.
Right.
Okay,
not for
Your
us.
discretion.
got it, thank you.
So hopefully, people, you and your people have the backing to say, or, the thought process of, okay, is this enough to allow us to give the CE certificate?
Yeah, I think we'll have our CE group talk about it,
Yeah.
because everything we have in place now has the 10 questions at the end with a passing score.
Yeah.
Which would be great to continue,
Yeah,
but you don't have
Up
to.
the top, I would say.
I don't see any reason why you couldn't keep it though, just because that requirement's not in there. I mean, we don't have a test requirement for any
And
of
that's
the
what I
other
was
CE,
clarifying, was the test.
Yeah.
requirement, so.
but you could as your organization. The other thing is if somebody wants to do a self-study and they apply for it, then we wouldn't have them necessarily do a quiz. I don't know, we haven't actually seen this yet, so we're not sure what we would do, but we would be approving that particular review for CE specifically. So it would technically wouldn't be self-study. We would just be allowing them to do it as an approved course of review or whatever. I don't even know if people are gonna even request it.
There's so much stuff online now. I think they should be a question.
That RVT did 112 hours in like 4 months, so it's available.
Yeah.
So is there any language to explain, do they get CEUs for doing residency or internships?
I think their internships are different. Residency they're exempt.
Oh, okay.
So internships are not exempt?
I don't know where we.
I'd have to pull the rule up, but I think they have, do they have to apply for it?
That's the hardship waiver, maybe?
No, they have to apply for residency. Or they have to apply to get those hours to count for residency. We can look it up. I just don't have it pulled up right now.
We were discussing.
Yeah, because not every internship is created equal, and so we made it to where if you want to receive credit for those internship hours, then it has to meet this criteria and you have to apply for the
most internships are that first year out though, not everybody, but most. And didn't you say that?
They're in
first
that
year out-
period where they
They don't need it anyway.
But
Yeah.
if they would go back for an internship, I guess that's where it would.
I think we did internships and maybe, was it board certification that way? There were some, yeah, there were some that were explicitly exempt, and then because other programs aren't created equal, then we made it to where they had to apply for it and meet certain criteria, which is,
Things like grounds and whatnot.
and we did that both for RBTs and veterinarians. And if you're an RBT and you go to vet school, you don't have to have CE for your RBT.
Didn't we agree that sitting on this board gave you 10 credit hours a year for CE?
No, but honestly, it probably should, and we can revisit this rule if we want to. But you cannot have 1 hour of CE for Dr. Shipman's 3-minute order. I'm sorry. Moving on.
Moving on.
Looking ahead, I already said this. Rule 1 and 2 are essentially the standard of care definition, and the goal here is to repeal those rules because it's literally one sentence. Rule 1 is one sentence of the standard of care for a veterinarian, and Rule 2 is one sentence for the standard of care for an RVT. Those can be repealed and combined and put into Rule 5. And we've already looked at that to some degree in Rule 5, the board has, but nothing has been finalized. We're gonna be moving back and forth because the standard of care rules, it's pretty comprehensive. Rule 6 and 8 applications, we need to modernize those to our current practice. For example, we no longer put on or control the VT&E or the NAVLE, so we don't need applicants to submit, their passport photos. We don't have anything to do with that anymore. We don't determine the standard passing score for either of those exams either. The organizations that put those on do, and so we have already have the language that we can put into a rule that says that the AABSB is responsible for determining the passing score of the VT&E and NAVLE for that organization too. Rule 7 and 9 on endorsement, they just need to be repealed because they're duplicative of a statute that is no longer in effect. And Rule 5, standard of practice, supervision of non-veterinarians, veterinary assistance program, BCPR, and telehealth. There's a lot going on in Rule 5. We may make a Rule 13 if we need to and split some of that stuff up. Some of this stuff might be more appropriate to put in a statute, and that could be something that is put on by BOA as an agency or the IDMA or some random person wants to come up with a statute on telehealth, and we're gonna have to look at it. Okay. So, telemedicine and the BCPR.
I saw it right here.
That's good.
Pretty cool.
We've been talking about telemedicine and the BCPR for a while. And we're gonna keep looking. It's not going away. Ever. Because we already have a statute that says you guys can do it. Yay! You guys already know that though, sort of.
You're so excited about this.
I am because I got to present on this at Crossroads. And the only person in this room, well, the two people who came in this room were Dr. Shipman and Dr. Gillespie. Dr. Gillespie was the only person who did not work for BOA and was not on the board of veterinary medicine who attended.
I wanted to be
No,
there.
you didn't. Dr. Schnarr was though. He was good.
See, wait.
He was actively engaged in the conversation. I bet he was. Okay. So as a reminder and for for Mindy. And Dr. Johnson, who will be with us starting tomorrow, she can always come back and look at this meeting because the meetings are recorded. We're being recorded now and then they're posted on our website and then live in perpetuity on YouTube. So this is one of these statutes that is not in the Practice Act. It is, however, on our website now. This statute was created for all of those healthcare professions like nursing, dentistry, physicians, physical therapy. It was not written for veterinarians, but veterinarians are included in it. Explicitly, veterinarians and veterinary students and or interns working under the direct supervision of a veterinarian, RVTs are not. So just so we're aware of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're not considered that.
That doesn't mean that they can't use this media at the direction of a veterinarian, but we'll get into some of the reasons why in a second. So telehealth, which is not telemedicine, they're different, but this Indiana statute contemplates the term telehealth, whereas we will be talking about telemedicine in our rules. So telehealth, globally is just the delivery of healthcare services using interactive communication, electronic communications and information technology. Secure video conferencing, store and forward technology, and remote patient monitoring between a provider in one location and a patient in another location. For our purposes, the patient, well, no, this is the definition. Later, you'll see the patient has to be in Indiana and the veterinarian does not have to be in Indiana, but they have to be licensed as a veterinarian in Indiana to provide care this way. So healthcare services are defined more as the assessment, diagnosis, evaluation, consultation, treatment, and monitoring of a patient, transferring medical data, health-related education, and health administration. Those first bullet points, the assessment, diagnosis, evaluation, those are going to be the things that the veterinarian is explicitly doing. If the veterinarian wants an RVT or an assistant to do some of the transferring of medical data to another provider, for a referral or health-related education or administration, that's okay. It just has to be at the direction of the veterinarian. Questions? So telehealth is using this electronic communication with an established client regarding an assessment, diagnosis, evaluation, consultation, treatment, monitoring of a particular patient. For veterinarians, ABCPR is required. The standard of care is the same as in-person care, and it only applies to DVMs and DVM students. Telehealth is not providing general advice or information to an established patient or non-patient. And telehealth is not an employee directed by a DVM to transfer medical data, provide patient health-related education, or health administration. And this is so confusing because the AVMA would call what telehealth is telemedicine. Okay? And I haven't put anything in your binders yet or your folders yet because I don't want you to be overwhelmed and confused. The AVMA has some really great guidance on telemedicine, and they also have some really great definitions. The language the AVMA uses, though, does not line up with what this statute is. And there's nothing we can do about this statute because it's global for all of the health professions. So it's clear as mud, and we're going over it again today, and we're going to go over it again many times. And we may even have to put on like a CE over it, because I know that most of the veterinarians in practice don't know that this is out there. Or they know that it's out there because we've sent it to the IVMA and they put it in their bulletin as well as we put it in our bulletin, but I don't know how many people understand it. By statute, there is a list of enumerated minimum requirements. And Lisa, I have another copy of this presentation if you want it.
That would love it.
Okay, so at a minimum, the practitioner must obtain the patient's name and location. The patient must be in Indiana. And they must obtain the client contact information. I have received phone calls though on this, and it's like, okay, does the client, who's the client? Does the client have to be in Indiana, or does the patient have to be in Indiana? Because the owner might be somewhere else. Use your best judgment. Like, the animal has to be in Indiana. It's up to you if you want the client in Indiana too. Because this is for humans and not animals that may be in Indiana and their client be. You have to disclose the practitioner's name and license number and obtain informed consent and obtain the patient's medical history and other information necessary to establish a diagnosis, which you guys already do, but you have to discuss with the client the diagnosis, evidence for the diagnosis, risk and benefits of various treatment options, including when it is advisable to seek in-person care. And all of this has to be documented in the record.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So because we have an academic institution and we have residents that don't carry a license, does that exclude them from being able to practice telehealth?
No, because
It just means we
they're-
don't have jurisdiction.
Because we don't have jurisdiction. It's a jurisdiction issue, not a practice issue, because they are explicitly exempted from licensure.
Okay.
But this is also gonna be a discussion at some point, and it's kind of a debate. Even if they are not licensed in Indiana, because they have that exemption, the exemption is only for the board's authority to regulate them, right? Like, so we can't discipline them, but the standard of care should, and it doesn't apply because there could be some sort of like civil liability. And so those folks would want to know this statute as well.
Yeah, so because it says disclose the practitioner's name and license.
Oh, the license number.
How do we?
So they're gonna be one, but if they follow all the other rules, then they'd be protected if somebody came at them in a civil suit. They have the documentation.
Or if they disclose that they're license exempt.
They do have
You know,
the hospital, so they practice under the DEA, our hospital DEA with their, unique suffix. So would that
Work as,
just something to think about. I don't want to get everybody in the weeds, but.
It still doesn't give us any kind of jurisdiction on it. I mean, that would really be like the pharmacy board that would have the jurisdiction. So I guess if it is their license, they're gonna wanna give that license because that's the only license that they have.
That's what they use to prescribe controlled substances.
Yeah. And the pharmacy board would have jurisdiction with it on that. Good question though. Create and maintain medical records, issue proper instructions for appropriate follow-up care, and provide a telehealth visit summary to the client, including any prescription information. That probably isn't happening, especially if your EMRs don't contemplate that at all. So the education piece is gonna be big for us to make sure everybody knows that this is actually out there. Again, out-of-state providers, they must be licensed to practice veterinary medicine in Indiana to provide veterinary services to animals in Indiana. And the medical records, it's the same standards of appropriate practice and medical records for patients in an in-person setting. The only real difference with the medical records piece is making sure that you're including the requirements in this statute, right? Like your follow-up care after a telemedicine visit, making sure that you are documenting that it was a telemedicine visit and that you provided your name and license number and that stuff. Any questions on that? I'm not gonna read all of this, but essentially for employers and employment contracts, a veterinarian cannot be required by their employer or in a contract to do telemedicine. No veterinarian is required to do telemedicine, period. And especially if the veterinarian believes that it would impact their ability to provide standard care. And they can't be required in a contract either.
Can I jump back on a couple of questions?
Yep.
One is on your technology. So secure video conferencing, store and forward technology, remote patient monitoring technology, which I said was like a portal. I'm assuming text is not considered one of those?
From a phone?
Right. Because that's where a lot of that happens. Or is that ambiguous enough that it can, we're not held to the HIPAA standards, right? So
You're not held to a HIPAA standard, but I would say that text messaging with your client would be considered telehealth, and those text messages probably should be
part of the medical record.
saved in part of the medical record.
The other question said that the BCPR is required, meaning that this is a previous client of yours and patient of yours previously that you're now seeing as telehealth?
That's sticky.
Yeah. That's what wasn't clear, so that's what I'm asking.
It will not be clear at the end of this
Tiptoed
meeting either.
past that. Yeah.
I'm trying to decide if you can establish a VC or in person.
Not in person, you mean?
Well, and there's also, you'll see in a minute, and I kind of left it out on purpose, but there could be, there is, depending on how the board sees it, a conflict of laws. So we'll get to that in a second. Well, I think we're getting into it right now anyway. Prescribing. So a DVM may issue a prescription to a patient who is receiving services through the use of telehealth. ... is the part I left out. It's because this statute actually says that you don't have to see the person first. You don't have to have an in-person visit, okay? And part of that is because of the federal rules, and even for the next, for controlled substances, honestly, it's the same thing. There are still COVID-related federal rules that allow this. And so at one point, it was extended to December 31st of 2025. It has been extended again. So technically, if we had a case that came before the board, we would talk about that and what the rule says at the time that the incident or event occurred, because the Practice Act, the way it's written, and we'll get to it in a minute, and the way it's interpreted by this board could conflict with these laws. Okay? Am I saying that right, Kyle?
Yes.
It
messy.
it's messy. Which is why we're going over it, and I tease with the, the Terminator, like, it's here, he's back, he's not going away. Like, we're gonna do something about it, but it's complicated, and we have conflicting laws, we have conflicting interpretations. But this Indiana statute says that so you can provide the prescription for the legend drug if the prescriber has satisfied the applicable standard of care, the issuance of the prescription is within the prescriber's scope of practice, and the prescription meets all other applicable federal and state laws, which would include these federal laws that I was just talking about. And then with controlled substances, the DVM can issue a prescription for a controlled substance to a patient receiving services through the use of telehealth, and this is where it's like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have seen the person or the patient in person previously, but for controlled substances, you do have to have an audio-visual, real-time, two-way interactive communication system, regardless of whether you've seen the patient before in person. And then again, it has to be the prescription has to be within the prescriber's scope of practice. It has to be for a legitimate medical purpose. And all of the inspect program requirements have to be met, and all other state and federal laws that are applicable to controlled substances have to be followed. Questions?
So
concerns?
you can prescribe a controlled substance to a patient and client you've never seen before, just from looking at them on a video. That seems very dangerous. Like,
You don't have to.
no, and I wouldn't, and I would assume that most people wouldn't. I mean, as it is, people don't even want to carry anything in their hospital thing.
Right.
What a pain in the neck it is. So I'm assuming that they wouldn't. But if you want to know where your Achilles heel in this is, we just found it, because like, you're talking about access and the drug shoppers, you just found where they're gonna seek it. And again, I would presume most veterinarians wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, but.
Now, there are other pharmacy statutes and requirements where you do have to see your patient so often. So this allows you to do it without seeing the patient, but then there are other bumpers
So how does
to
that,
prevent that.
how does that bumper conflict? Like, who wins in that one?
Well, because it's like, maybe you can see this new patient for the first time via telemedicine and prescribe a small amount of controlled substances because of the issue, whatever the issue is, but then within so many days, I mean, and it could be 90 days, I don't have them memorized, you have to see that person in person, you have to obtain and record the vitals, you have to chart everything appropriately, and then this is where the pharmacy board would get involved if you're not doing that appropriately, which is a little bit, so I, as a former deputy attorney general working with the pharmacy board cases, I know that the requirements are out there and they do only apply to human medicine. Our medical record keeping and this statute would be the one that would be more controlling. And this is where we get into PCPR and what is recently seen and all of that other stuff. So it's messy, and that's why we're doing this. And it's not gonna all make sense at the end of today, because it hasn't made sense for the last few
We're in
times.
the process of making the bumpers, so
Right.
what you're saying.
Now, I will say that this statute has a lot of bumpers in it already, okay? Now, this one with the controlled substances looks scary, but I mean, all of the record keeping and making sure that you're licensed in Indiana, that the animal's in Indiana, and all the other stuff that it requires, I mean, those are real bumpers.
UC2s still require a hard copy prescription in Indiana. Well, veterinarians most
Right,
don't have to
that was the
prescribe
other
it.
thing, is how do you do
You
that?
might as well
with-
just come into the hospital if you have to come in and pick up the script anyway, for your C2s.
Well, and that's where the standard of care comes into this too, right? Like, you gotta come in anyway, so this is not an appropriate method of.
Every hospital can set up their own policies, right?
Mhm.
Right, so, yeah, I'd imagine that's what a lot of them will do. I mean, like, you need to draw the line.
Now,
It's-
for
it's
this
just
one
the
in
thought,
particular,
though.
Yeah.
It's just the thought
Sure.
that someone,
And it's not always the client, the drug shopper.
Yeah, you're right.
They just, right, so I'm just saying, you gotta think about that too. Because this leaves a loophole for that. So,
But then to your point, one of the things we thought about was, okay, if you can't, if your dog is too painful to leave, if the cat is fractious, then how do I force you to get him here so I can say, okay, go home with this Scatapin or with this small cat or whatever? Because then that still falls into that, so then that would be our, you know, I'm telling you, I haven't heard him, I don't know what his kidneys are doing, I don't know what his heart's doing, but in order to do that, here's this, and you take the risk of what it might do if there's underlying condition, so that you can get in here, so then I can examine, do the blood work, do the x-rays. So, in my mind.
is GAPA scheduled now?
it's not, but you have to report it
Right,
under
reportable but
inspect.
not controlled, so.
Not
like,
yet, yeah.
Yeah, that's the gray zone there too, because I agree with you, because if GABA is what we're talking about, I absolutely want to be able to do that, because sometimes you can't get them in without that.
Right.
But I don't know if I want hydrocodone.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know, I
That's
mean.
right. So I think we talked about this at many other times, and the loopholes we're finding when we thought we had a pretty good grip on it. Well, but then I can't do that, you know, so then now what do I do? So you make the loopholes just big enough for that, but other things are gonna slip in, and then we're counting on those being reported, or something happens unfortunately, just like in regular medicine, we're counting on everybody to do the right thing. And then something happens, and then they get brought here, and then they get punished. We're gonna have some slip through the rules.
Well, and that's, so the biggest issue right now that the vet board has with the conflict is whether you can establish the VCPR electronically, okay? Because if that VCPR is already established, they could do this.
Don't we do this in large animal already? So like, I mean, we know the farm, but we don't know the animal, and we're treating them, so it's already happening.
We're just putting a newer title to it.
And trying to control it the best we can, so that things don't happen.
And I mean, like Kelly was alluding to, the board is going to forever spend most of its time regulating, you know, the bottom 5% of the profession, right? The other 95% of the profession
Are self-regulated.
are self-regulated, right? And so and they will exploit whatever, you know, loophole may be in place. What we're really trying to get to kind of today is understanding the landscape that already exists before we go in and start changing the vet specific stuff, and understanding that a lot of it does exist. We just might not have historically seen it because it's outside of the Practice Act of Veterinary Medicine, and it's actually all health professions that allow it. And unfortunately, when they wrote it, didn't necessarily write it in the context of veterinarians, which is kind of how InSpec was, right? Like InSpec is developed, and I point to you, it's not your fault. No. But right, InSpec was really clunky because it wasn't built for veterinarians. And so similarly, it's not that vets they absolutely can do telehealth, or as this would say, or telemedicine in the rest of the world. It's just not crafted with language we use and practices we commonly do, and it's not considering that. So that doesn't mean it can't ever be changed. It would be a General Assembly, a legislative effort to do so. The board on some of these bigger pieces wouldn't be able to do it directly, but we can put clarifying language on the back end in rule to help all of this confusion, which is the ultimate goal, right? Is to look at this and say, okay, foundationally, what do we want to do, and what do we believe is the right direction? And how do we make sure that the rules and the statute reflect that?
The other reason for doing this exercise, and the reason we'll keep doing it, is because eventually we are going to get case. And the board has to establish and understand their role in disciplining, if that's what you're gonna do, a case that comes before us. So it's really the two issues that I see with this from a discipline standpoint is informed consent, standard of care. I mean, you might have medical record keeping like you do with, in-person care, but either the provider's gonna fail to appropriately meet the standard of care requirements or fail to give proper informed consent. And that's where you guys need to know this statute. And then obviously you know the standard of care, but if it is an animal or a condition or circumstances that are not appropriate for, a telemedicine visit, regardless of the VCPR issue, that's irrelevant. Was it appropriate to treat this animal via telemedicine? That's gonna be your biggest. It's always the veterinarian's job to meet the standard of care. Always, in person, virtually, always.
And they're equivalent. That's the key.
Yeah.
Is the virtual standard of care is equivalent to an in-person standard of care.
Which is when you get those that slide through, those are the people that you're gonna be seeing, and they're gonna be informed consent or standard of care issues. Because the medical record keeping ones that we see now, they're always incidental to
A standard of care.
a standard of care issue.
You found it on
Yeah. Or it's charged only as a medical record keeping issue because you lack information to actually charge the standard of care issue because you don't have the records.
And standard of care is also, I want to say regional, but where you're practicing, meaning very, very rural versus next to an emergency specialty clinic or whatnot, right?
And
we have-
just like.
We have that to keep in the back of our
It's not a
mind.
universal standard.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like the VCPR, like farm versus small animal, that's gonna be a standard of care question too at some point.
But access can be regional or financial. So you can live next door to an emergency hospital and still use it.
That's true, and that matters, but they have to document it.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's gonna be an informed consent issue or a standard of care issue. And getting that education piece out to the community is gonna be a big initiative that the board is gonna have to undertake in some capacity, whether it's on us completely through BOA or working with the IDMA or.
When you're talking community, you mean the vet community, like
Mhm.
the veterinarians understand what their limitations
Yeah.
are. Okay, well, it's clear as mud to me now.
You fit right in.
I would be happy to educate, I have no idea.
And I don't mean you guys need to go out knocking on clinic doors. Unless you want to.
No, but I do remember, in fact, I lost years of my life to that. And yes, it was.
This won't be that bad.
Yeah, but it did, inspect, I would say, likely change some practices
100%.
on how they
Yes.
operate
Yeah.
to fit into that model. And I don't know that we're necessarily looking to significantly change the practice of veterinary medicine, but to be mindful of what the true guardrails are in this space, because it is an evolving technology.
Well, like the whole concern we have, right, is can we provide the standard of care in a virtual setting or, and can we do no harm? Like those really are the two things that I see in that, like access to drugs is one of the biggies that I would worry about. And like, I don't know, but the last time I went to the doctor, my doctor doesn't physically touch me ever anyway.
Same.
Like,
Same.
we do a lot more in our physical exam. Admittedly, our patients don't talk, so
Right.
that's our.
But kids can also be seen virtually, right? You know,
And
human kids.
people with dementia and, I mean, completely incompetent adults can also be seen virtually. And you know, you may have a patient that has seizure disorders and you know,
They're not having a seizure in front of you.
you know, but you can have the conversation, you can prescribe the medication.
Yeah. So it's, for sure it's valuable. It's complicated, but.
And I think that's because I think to the core, veterinarians are generally risk adverse, right? Without having and that we won't likely go into this space fully, but without knowing what the board believes is the standard of care, they're adverse to taking steps into that space because they don't have. And so I think what this tries to do is say, we're not going to necessarily address standards of care, but the far out guardrails that we need to stay within. And the standard of care is the same as what you would do in person. It's just that the telemedicine, telehealth scares them of what their comfort level is in that decision making in the clinical, evaluation of that animal. For that, because until, like Brittany said, a case comes before the board, that will be the first goalpost to say this is or isn't standard of care in that setting.
Oh, look, PCPI. Okay,
Another life topic.
we're only looking at Indiana for this one. In past meetings, we've gone through like the FDA, USDA, AVMA definitions, stuff like that, but we're just gonna look at Indiana right now. This is the definition of the VCPR, and the main ingredient here that the board and everyone else gets tripped up on with the VCPR issue is 2A and B. The veterinarian has sufficient knowledge of the animal to initiate a diagnosis of the medical condition of the animal, and the veterinarian has recently seen and is personally acquainted with the keeping and care of the animal by either of the following: A, an examination of the animal, and B, by recently seeing and being personally acquainted with the keeping and care of the representative animals and associated husbandry practices by making medically appropriate and timely visits to the premises where the animal is kept. So that definition with examination of the animal is often, and in the past, I think, interpreted as a physical examination with hands on the animal. The question is, though, is it appropriate or possible that you can actually examine an animal through two-way electronic means? The conditions would have to be right for whatever the issue is. I mean, if you literally need to palpate something on the animal, that's not gonna be following the standard of care, right? But if technology advances to where you can look at something with the state, through telemedicine, and this, we are not gonna get into all these definitions, but if you are a specialist and you receive an image from another provider of an animal, that is telemedicine, and you do not have to see that patient in person, but you could be looking at this animal, have enough information to provide a diagnosis without physically touching that animal.
Sure, like how's that not
X-rays.
what every consultant on an X-ray or the IDEX consultant line is doing when they do that?
And B is commonly thought as like farms, but also think shelters, right? Like just,
Or feral pet homes.
yeah, or
Well, it really comes down to like, what's the problem? Because if they've got a dermatitis and you can, but again, I would submit, if you're FaceTime with a client, it's a nightmare. I mean, if you're looking at the ceiling, it's like FaceTime with my parents. Not a rewarding experience. Let me just take a picture of this thing. It's blurry. I don't know what type of part of the body it is.
Yeah.
So it's.
And the only time you would really truly need the FaceTime would be if you were gonna contemplate prescribing a controlled substance. Because because otherwise pictures, text messages with the pictures could be appropriate, for like a dermatology
I mean, I
patient.
think about it, like, if you bring me a highly aggressive German Shepherd and we're not sedating it, my exam is no different than FaceTime, because I'm not touching that.
But like one that we've contemplated, right, would be, say, we can say it's an aggressive dog, but it doesn't matter. Aggressive dog with an ear infection, right? That is a new client to you. You know, to what extent are you able to, you know, evaluate that dog and potentially establish what the next care steps are? As in, okay, you evaluate the dog, you can't visualize the eardrum, right? Virtually, or at least not easily. But if you establish the VCPR care electronically, could you then say, hey, I need you to actually schedule a tech appointment, and the tech is going to lay eyes on the eardrum and say it's intact, so we can then you can prescribe based off of their findings of the eardrum's intact, or whatever else you may. That way it's not held up on a veterinarian's appointment time, because you've evaluated what you can virtually, you're using your technicians in person to evaluate the clinical information you need. And then you could still establish care and prescribe without the veterinarian seeing the patient in person. That's not to say no one saw it in person, but you didn't. Or take an x-ray, or whatever, you know what I mean, whatever you might want that technician to do.
Do that initial assessment, prescribe the chill protocol,
Correct.
so then the technician can look at the
Correct.
I'm
Exactly.
just thinking, yeah, you said mean
Okay.
dog.
Yeah.
The technician's gonna verify that too. That's right, it's me.
It's me.
That's using them appropriately.
Tracy just prescribed a Rassel.
I'd like to know what your chill protocol is. Pass that on. More is more.
There's also, there's a case that was sent to the United States Supreme Court.
I bring this up.
Ish. So the Fifth Circuit, it's Hines versus Purdue, which is Dr. Hines down in Texas, and Purdue is the name of, I think, like the board chair of the Texas Board of Veterinary Medicine. So he, in Texas, it is very clearly, explicitly stated that to practice veterinary medicine, you have to have a VCPR, okay? They require in-person physical exam to establish that. And there was a veterinarian who was semi-retired or retired from actual clinical practice. He was older and had some back injuries, and so he wasn't able to stand and meet the physical requirements of veterinary practice. But he had started kind of consulting with clients via email. And so he had, one of the examples was, I don't know, like a bird that needed a splint. And so he got a picture of a bird and told the client how to splint the foot or the wing or whatever it was. He also was getting information and getting pictures from clients and like sending them out for labs, reviewing the labs and then saying, oh yeah, you need this medication, and doing that way. And he was ultimately disciplined by the Texas Board of Veterinary Medicine for failing to establish that VCPR. And he sued. It has made it all the way up to the United States Supreme Court because he has made the claim that that physical exam touching the animal requirement violates his constitutional right, First Amendment right to free speech. And when you go through the court system, and like in the federal court, you go to the district court, then you appeal it up to, in this case, the Fifth Circuit, and if you don't like that decision, it gets appealed up to the United States Supreme Court. here, the Fifth Circuit, and this has been going on for like 10 years because there was already a ruling by the Fifth Circuit that ended up getting remanded, and then there's another issue, and the Fifth Circuit said, yes, this statute is unconstitutional because it violates his First Amendment right to free speech and his professional speech as a physician, and that he cannot make a diagnosis and treatment even though he's capable of doing all of that. And it went through all of these reasons, well, for making it seem more reasonable or rational that you can actually make these assessments via telemedicine. The other thing though with this First Amendment issue for the way that it is categorized in that particular case, you have to establish that harm has been caused by the speech. And in this case, the only thing that the AVMA and all of the other experts for the state could provide, or for the board could provide, was the risk of potential harm and not actual harm. And so the US Supreme Court had that case, and then another case that involved a therapist and gender affirming care, or it wasn't gender affirming care, conversion therapy in Colorado. And so it was these two professional speech cases, and they decided to take the Colorado case, and the Texas case just kind of sat there for a while. The Supreme Court found that it was a violation of free speech in the Texas or in the Colorado case. However, it was based on a viewpoint discrimination and not the same issue, like very narrowly tailored to viewpoint discrimination, and not, it doesn't have anything to do with the way that the Fifth Circuit wrote the opinion in Hines. So that case doesn't necessarily affect the Hines case, but the Supreme Court denied certiorari, so the Hines case, the Fifth Circuit opinion stands. That is the controlling authority in the Fifth Circuit, that statute that required physical touching of the animal as part of establishing the VCPR is unconstitutional.
Some light reading.
Very fun.
That's great. Good footnote.
Yeah, but I think that's the challenge to keep in consideration so that we don't inadvertently set ourselves up, right? And that doesn't, we have to be mindful of that.
Well, there's probably some degree of telemedicine happening with all of us in various amounts of practice.
Well, it can happen. I mean, we have the statute right here that says
That's what
that
I'm
we
saying,
can
it's
do it.
happening already, so like this fear that we have of it, we just need to embrace some regulation.
Yeah, so like I said, the issue is the VCPR and establishing it appropriately and ensuring that it maintains established. Because this does not contemplate, you have to reestablish the VCPR every 12 months for it to be effective or active. It's
Because that is narrowly applied to FDA, the VFD. I believe it's the Veterinary Feed Directive.
I don't even know if they.
So that's why we all kind of
Some-
started
Maybe they do.
utilizing that same mindset, right?
But
Well-
that doesn't mean you can't, as a practice, decide.
Yeah.
You can have more restrictions, you
say,
can't have less restrictions.
Well, but that's only restricted to a very specific topic. You might say for your practice, 24 months is appropriate, without seeing it in person.
Well, for the issue, like you have a dermatology patient that you see via telemedicine because you know that they have allergies or whatever the issue is. You can see the patient on pictures or through FaceTime, and that's appropriate. But if they start having a seizure disorder, you're not gonna have an appropriate VCPR for that issue. I mean, because you can't necessarily appropriately diagnose. I mean, so the condition could change, and that creates another, as it's written today, that can change your VCPR depending on, you could have established in person January 1st for the UTI, and then July 1st, they come in for a seizure disorder. Like, you're just not gonna do that over telemedicine, even though you have a clearly established VCPR in person in January. And that's the other issue where you guys are gonna have to consider that standard of care and informed consent piece if we have something that comes open in the future, because you could have a vet say, well, no, I see that patient every January 3rd, every year. I haven't established
In 12
CPR.
months.
Well, but for this case, it wasn't appropriate for you to do that. Because it wasn't that annual exam.
But depending on what the abnormality or what they're reporting,
It could be fine.
or could be the
Right.
continued via telemedicine. It doesn't, because you already have the BCPR umbrella, you can still obviously interact.
Right.
However, yes, the dog you saw in January might not be the dog, clinically the same dog you see in July, right? It might not be the same dog.
Also, why two-way communication. Got it?
Is there gonna be a test later?
That's how you get your CE.
So are you comfortable that you now know is what we know? That's probably scary, isn't it?
Well, and
Not
she
much.
actually sat through my crossroads.
This is her second
She's
read.
also seen it. I mean, you guys have seen it too. Maybe the only one who's seen it the first time.
She looks inspired.
I learned.
Fortunately, she probably understands those controlled substance laws better than I do. Okay, so when is the VCPR required? Oh, you guys are definitely gonna have to do some work on this. Because our statute does not explicitly state to practice medicine,
Yes.
veterinary medicine, you have to have VCPR.
So to clarify, right, some states, it's an all-encompassing PCPR, meaning in order to practice veterinary medicine, for anything, to do anything, you have to have a VCPR. Indiana is not one of those states. It is only necessary in very select situations in which a VCPR must be established. So it's not an all-encompassing of everything we do, that's what we think.
Well, at least in writing.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
So that's where we're diving
That's kind of what
into.
you said, like every time you send an x-ray to somebody or call a specialist and ask them for a consult, that's practicing vet medicine.
And like the AVMA contemplates that, where sometimes you would need a VCPR and sometimes you wouldn't. But if you are sending and receiving information like that, I mean, it can get tricky depending on exactly what you're doing. I mean, if you are gonna make a diagnosis and tell the primary care physician that, yes, this is whatever, I mean, you gotta,
I think AVMA calls that teleconsulting,
yeah.
Right.
but again, they have better definitions than what we're up against currently.
And so that's where we do need to bring in some of those, adopt some of those definitions.
That's what I'm wondering, that doesn't seem like the same thing, because it's still going through the filter, like, they're not robots, that primary care is still a veterinarian who's, they can choose to take the advice or not take the advice.
And- And under the Practice Act, those consulting referring folks, I think, are exempt from licensure too.
From what?
Licensure.
Exempt from licensure. I mean, so you have a specialist in Kentucky that you're consulting with,
Right.
they don't necessarily have to be licensed just to consult with another veterinarian.
Yeah, I mean, some of the extras we send out go out of the country.
Poison control, all that, yeah.
So for this one, okay, so indirect supervision, the definition of indirect supervision contemplates that a tech or an assistant can do certain things under indirect supervision as long as there's a VCPR in existence. So, I mean, some of these tech appointments, the veterinarian seeing and establishing that VCPR before the tech goes in and sees them on a new patient. And I don't,
I feel like,
I feel like, yes.
yeah, okay, good.
Yes.
That's what we do.
And then under, this is another exemption to the practice of veterinary medicine, and this is for those folks who are licensed in another health profession, like a chiropractor for humans. They can actually treat animals, or a dentist to treat an animal as long as they're in good standing with their professional board. They provide assistance as requested by a veterinarian licensed in Indiana, act within the consent of the client, act within the VCPR, and acts under the direct or indirect supervision of the licensed veterinarian. So they can practice their discipline in Indiana under these conditions and not have to be a veterinarian.
Which happens with the zoo all the time.
Right. It also happens other places, maybe under this rule or not. And then RVTs may act under the direct or indirect supervision of a veterinarian form routine food animal management practices if there's a valid VCPR in existence.
And currently, that's not defined, right?
What's not, the food animal.
Food animal management practices. Oh, I'm just saying, so
Rule 5 is big.
it's currently not defined of what those practices, those management practices are.
Under your previous slide, if a equine dentist, for example, is working on a horse that the veterinarian has seen within the last year or 2 years, the veterinarian can simply be providing indirect supervision and not actually be on the premises. And the equine veterinarian can
Only
do the work.
Only if they are a human dentist licensed by the Indiana Dental Board. This is for a member in good standing of another licensed or regulated profession within Indiana. So those equine dentists, that's
Yeah,
not the
they've got
same as this.
licenses from Texas or somewhere else, or at school, somewhere else. So they're still,
Now, to answer your question, it wouldn't be under this statute, but it's a possibility that that could be true under supervision, because a equine dentist
It's just a layperson.
is just an assistant who can work under
Direct and indirect supervision.
direct or indirect.
But wasn't that the chart that we had?
I'm sorry, no.
Like, this
Direct.
isn't okay, this is okay.
Right, but that's not ruled yet.
Right.
Yeah. So they couldn't do indirect supervision, because an assistant can't do indirect supervision, but if it was an RVT,
An RVT equine dentist.
or if they're at the horse race track, they can do
That's
it.
a whole other can of worms.
you know, that's not the case. That's clear as well.
So let me back up on this statute for just a second, because it's gonna become relevant soon. You have a member in good standing, let's just use Dennis for example. You go out to the zoo at the request of the zoo veterinarian. Client's a little different with this one because it's the zoo, so you're gonna have an informed consent. You act within the VCPR, and you act under the direct or indirect supervision of the veterinarian. That veterinarian needs to be documenting in their records that they've requested this dentist to come out, write exactly what they asked the dentist to do, establish that the consent of the client was in the record, that they have the VCPR, and they need to have the records of the dentist also in the veterinarian record. I mean, because you can't just have this dentist out here doing whatever and not actually communicating. If it's a true referral, there has to be communication in order for that veterinarian to maintain the standard of care in treating this animal.
When we get to the point that this is as close to law as it gets,
This is law.
when we get our clarification components done, I think it would be valuable, just like we had that blue and gold flow chart, to say, I mean, truly,
No, yeah.
and some of the stuff you say, then I'm like, well, yeah, then that I feel okay about. But I think we need to provide, like in this situation, this form would complete your, this would be your guideline to keep you legal or above the table. For texting and video and whatever, this checklist is what you need to have in your records at all time. Here's the downloadable version or whatever, so we can slide it into EMRs and paper charts that are still existing.
Well, and this is just,
This is messy for us, we need to be really clear and provide,
Yep.
just this sheet is all you need to be legit.
well, and we need, you guys need to establish, and it can be done by rule, even though we're looking at statutes right now, when the VCPR is required, regardless of how it's established. When is a VCPR required? Because here, in writing under the statutes, it's kind of piecemeal, right? And like, I'm glad that this statute is here, and it shows that you have to have a VCPR if you're gonna have a dentist, you know, working on an animal, right? But it's unclear in some places, and we're gonna get to a slide here in a minute that is gonna blow people's minds. We get called on it all the time.
Just wait there.
Hasn't happened yet.
I'm waiting, like mine hasn't already been blown.
Oh, wait, we already did this one. So this one isn't the big one, but a VCPR must exist before a licensed veterinarian dispenses or prescribes a prescription product. But this brings us back to that telemedicine or the telehealth statute that explicitly does say, even though I left it out in my presentation on purpose, that you can see the patient through the telemedicine portal or communication device, whatever you're using, and not in person. And prescribe drugs. Questions? This is just where that conflict of laws is kind of come into play. This is a rule that a veterinarian can be disciplined for prescribing or dispensing the drugs or therapy unless a veterinarian client-patient relationship has been established. And I don't know what therapy means. It's not a prescription product. So we've already talked about this in past board meetings on Rule 5 that we're deleting this and just reestablishing when a VCPR is going to be required. And then I guess I don't have it on here, but we have another statute that says it's for immunizations. And do I already have it in here?
It's that second to last line,
It is?
the second part of it.
Oh. Okay. It's at the bottom of the statute too, so people kind of like skim over it. Now, this doesn't apply to what, like cattle or livestock and something else. Or maybe just only animals. Veterinary prescription products, including drugs and immunizing products restricted by state and federal law for use by a licensed veterinarian, may not be diverted or transferred to an individual for use on an animal if there is not a current VCPR within the original prescribing veterinarian. This isn't the statute that I was thinking of though.
That's the rabies.
That's rabies, right?
It's in this rule, but it's not, or it's in one of the statutes, but I just don't have it copied on here. There is one though that explicitly states that for immunizing patients for a fee, It just says immunizing, it does not explicitly state rabies, it just says immunizing. That an RVT or an assistant can do it if there's a valid BCPR. So where we're getting calls and where this is becoming a problem is these pop-up vaccine clinics. Okay? They don't always have a veterinarian on site, or they don't want to have a veterinarian on site. And they just want to say, yes, these shelters can go out and do a pop-up clinic in the Walmart parking lot and, give all these vaccines.
They're doing everything but rabies, or they're doing?
Right. Which you can purchase
At
at
Tractor
a
Supply,
Tractor
yeah.
Supply, right? Like, but that's for your own
So
animal.
you're
And
not
not
paying
for a
someone
fee.
else to do it.
That's
And
kind of
then
a conundrum
the
where-
issue of payment also comes up because is the fee being included in the adoption fee for a fee? Because that RVT or that assistant or that shelter worker is getting paid somewhere probably, right? Like, is it truly voluntary that these folks are out here giving immunizations? And then aside from this, we have a whole other topic that we'll probably get into in a couple of years about shelters and rescues and whether they own the animals or not, because that exempts them from a lot of things if they own the animals.
we dance that
That's
weekly.
we do, we talk about it weekly along with the pop-up clinics.
Are they property of the state? Are they unowned property of the state? That kind of conversation. And then because once you own an animal, the entity owns its own animal, then it's its own pet, and you can do most anything to your own animal.
Right, and then we have like rescues where they clearly own the animals, but they might have somebody be coming in who's not licensed to, provide castration. And it's like, well, is it the owner's barn cats or is it actual like community cats? And I mean, there's just all kinds of different things happening. And who owns the animals? Do we have jurisdiction over them if they own the animal and they're also a veterinarian? Wild times. So yeah, that's telemedicine and VCPR, and we'll be talking about them frequently.
Well, that was a lot.
Sorry. Do we need another break?
Do we, or we're kind of near the end.
We could bust out these reports fast.
Yeah.
Everybody, okay with proceeding? Let's do it then. Looks like we're under the Center for Animal Policy and some reports.
Okay,
Do you need a break, and do you
No.
want the Dr. Shipman to go first? You can catch your breath.
he'll take longer than I do.
Oh, well, all right then.
Well, he has a lot to update on. A whole
All right.
I just have a couple of things. As far as litigation goes, we've gotten one new complaint, one new cease and desist, a motion to dismiss. You guys don't have to do anything on any of that stuff yet. We don't have any post-discipline or issues to talk about. Consumer complaints filed by the board, I have stopped doing that. Previously, we used to get a lot of calls from folks saying, yeah, I don't want to, I stopped sharing my screen. Essentially saying, I don't want to file a complaint because of retaliation or for whatever reason they wanted to remain anonymous.
Go to the top of your window.
I got it, finally. And I was filing consumer complaints for those, but the Attorney General's office wasn't doing anything with them because I don't have personal knowledge of the issues. And they really do need personal knowledge to even really get started with an investigation. And I just am telling people now that they have to file with the AG's office. It's it's not worth it for me to file because they can't do anything with it. So, now that's not to say that we don't find something that we need to report, and I will do it if the board needs to file something, but just the calls that I have received lately, it's just not. And a lot of them are like, oh, I see somebody doing equine dentistry on Facebook. Okay. I don't have any personal knowledge of that. I mean, I don't even know who these people are. So, so I've stopped doing them for now. We've had one settlement conference. We've had 4 retake interviews for the VTNE, none for the NAVLE, and we have approved 5 continuing education courses last quarter. And that is something that Dr. Shipman and I do now, unless it's something that we feel like the board really needs to discuss. And that was something that the board decided we could do probably about a year ago. Well,
Question, just curious on the VTNE retakes. Since we don't see them anymore, is this our 3rd time or 6th time? Just
so they
curious.
can take it up to 3 times without getting approval. So most of them are number 4. I did approve one recently that was a number 5, but the only reason that I did it was because on her 3rd attempt, she got 418. And then her 4th attempt was like 350 something, but she had extreme technical difficulties during the exam and like some personal stuff at home, and she's like, I shouldn't have used it. So I told her for the 5th time, we'll approve it because she was so close the 3rd time. But if she fails again, I'm gonna have her come before the board for a 6th time. So I think that's what we kind of contemplated anyway, was that if we got up to like a 5th or 6th time, that maybe we needed to have them come in person. But because she was so close and she said, no, I had all this stuff going on, I shouldn't have even taken the exam that day, I did it anyway. I felt like that was appropriate. And then we still, like right now, the license applications are kind of crazy because we've got incoming vets graduating and they start applying in January, and so their licenses are just gonna sit there until next week when Dr. Marsh sends me all of the degree conferral. Click. We're back up to 2,933, and at least one more that I issued today for veterinarians. I don't know how we got here, because after renewals, we lost 250 veterinarians. I don't know where they went. Some folks have renewed after the deadline and paid a penalty for it. And when they renew like that, as long as there's not like an issue where they're reporting an arrest or a malpractice issue or something like that, I don't see it. It's just automatically renewed. And then we're about the same on RVTs that we have been, about 2,200 and 300. I've got 3 people on probation, and I think one of them is on probation for like 5 years, so he's still not due to come in until next year, I guess. And then we have a couple other folks that were recent or that we're familiar with that we know when they're coming in. And then the best news is that I have hired an assistant board director. Courtney Jackman will be starting May 26th. She graduates from Purdue next Friday in animal sciences. And then for anybody that doesn't know the name, she grew up in a veterinary clinic. Her dad and her grandpa are both very familiar veterinarians. And she's excited to come to the board, and we're excited to have her. And I think she'll be a great addition to the board. And you guys will get to meet her in July.
Yeah. Both her dad and her grandfather are award winners at the university as well.
Yes,
As
I heard that.
recognized alumni. Very impressive.
Her dad's on the website. I was just,
On ours or Purdue's?
on ours.
Vet
Yours,
board.
vet boards.
He's
Background
the-
picture,
he's the vet truck.
he's the vet truck sitting.
Oh, he is?
Yeah. Standing there talking.
Well, I'll be.
Way to love that.
Wouldn't expect anything less from them.
Yeah, they are.
I have a funny story about Dr. Jackman that I'll show it to you later. Okay, AAVSB updates. We've got I went to the Directors Summit a couple weeks ago, which is why the board meeting is actually today, so May 23rd. We talked about unlicensed practice, use of AI in the clinics, establishing a BCPR electronically, because everybody is talking about that, and nobody's going to stop talking about it for a while. And the past resolutions from the 2025 annual meeting. And if you want more information on that, we can talk about that later offline. We will have, so the 2026 annual meeting is September 23rd through 26th in Providence, Rhode Island. Dr. Shipman and I will be attending. Dr. Peelman will be attending as the delegate. Yay! I think Natalie Goodwin had indicated that she would be interested in going too. If she goes and wants to be the alternate delegate, that's awesome. If not, then I would be the alternate delegate. And then that way, I don't have to do anything unless Kelly is murdered or kidnapped during the meeting. That was, like, I was safe in Cincinnati because Dr. Sunbury made sure I was safe because he was the alternate delegate. So they knew where.
Nothing was gonna happen to her.
Okay, so, and then they're calling for nominations for the 2026-27 term for board of directors and some other positions. Those are all due May 28th. If anybody is elected or nominated today, then I'll work with that person to get their packet sent to the board by May 28th. And then the elections will be held at the annual meeting in September. And then we already know that the continuing education audits begin.
Complete.
I am complete.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shipman?
We do that.
She wanted it under.
We'll do it under new business.
Under new business.
Just
Yes.
following my instructions.
Yeah, I tried to. So, a few updates from the Board of Animal Health. Obviously, high path continues to be of concern. Since October of 2025, we have, I don't even know what the new number is. We've diagnosed 137 cases of high path AI, most of them in Northeast Indiana. So that is, it's a lot. A lot. We had made it 28 days without a case. That's the longest we've made it so far until this past Monday. So this past Monday we had a case, yesterday we had a case, and there's a potential for another case today. So same area, same neck of the woods up in Elk Grove, Green County. So we did implement 5 new strategies up in northern Indiana to try to combat this virus. So what we're seeing is, I would say, unusual in the sense of cases across the country in which we're seeing vertical transmission or lateral transmission. So once this virus is kind of in this community, it just circulates within the community pretty rapidly. That is not necessarily the case across the country or really in other parts of Indiana, where we have one-off cases where the risk is truly from migratory waterfowl as they are flying over. So this would be potential. So we have had, between October and today, we've had at least 2 separate introductions, one in October, one in, which actually burnt out sometime in January, a second introduction in February of a similar but different virus. And then we still have to wait to see on the genetic sequencing of the virus that was detected on Monday to know if that was a 3rd introduction or not. Given the amount of time since the last case, it would not be surprising if it was a new introduction of virus. So our folks are continuing to, work hard up in that neck of the woods to get ahead of it as best as possible. The 5 prongs that I indicated in my report, those are put in place to really adapt our response to the needs of this community, right? So it's predominantly Amish, and it's also very heavy in duck production, which has some unique characteristics as they are on the domestic side still the reservoir species for influenza. So it really likes our ducks. And so you can kind of see there those 5 points, but trying to figure out where the virus is and isn't. We're also working with researchers at the University of Minnesota to better understand the clinical presentation of ducks in ducks. And so also having conversations with USDA Wildlife Services to better understand the role of peri-domestic species, specifically rodents, in their ability or potential to spread this virus across premises. So we have found a mouse on a farm that had influenza matrix A virus. They were unable to take it further to confirm that was an H5, but they did find the virus in that mouse, so on a positive farm. So that's just something we want to be mindful of, and making sure that our producers are also contemplating rodenticide and insecticide as those could be potential vectors for moving the virus. As far as dairy surveillance, so we continue to be in stage 1 of the National Milk Testing Strategy. We're, I believe, on month 11 of that. We are looking to actually transition to silo testing from tankers to silos over the next 60 days. So that should significantly decrease the number of samples that we have to run. So basically what we're doing now is as the milk's being delivered to the processing facility, they're pulling a sample out of the tanker before it offloads into the silo. And going forward, we're in transition to just pulling a sample out of the silo after the tanker has already left. And so there's benefits and risks to that as well. The test sensitivity is sensitive enough to detect it. However, the concern being if there is a detection, the way the paperwork is kept, it's a lot harder to trace what farms are contributing to that silo, because a lot of those silos are continuous flow. So there's milk coming in and milk coming out. So at the time that you're pulling, what are you actually capturing? It's just going to be more challenging, right? So if we do get a positive, our go fish is going to be likely broader to go try to find the contributing dairies. But we do have some comfort in the fact that we have, over 11 months of negative samples. Currently in the country, we're really only seeing the virus. It's down to, I think, 4 farms in California, and then just a handful in Idaho as well. So that's where the we'll say active cases are. And those are very different scenarios. Idaho, they are still seeing what they believe to be circulation of the virus. California, this is just a kind of residual virus, so some chronic carriers within a herd. And so USDA is actually facilitating testing in those herds to identify and to cull the cows that are chronic carriers. And so as you can imagine, in these 1, 2, 3, 7,000 cow dairies, it can take 1 or 2 chronic carriers to just pop that bulk tank positive. So, but identifying them is on a cow by cow level of where that might be. So that's ongoing. We also, New World Screwworm continues to be in the news of concern. An April diagnosis in Mexico that was, I believe, 62 miles from the Texas border. That is the closest detection we have had of that. So as a reminder, the USDA does estimate if we were to have New World Screwworm detected in the United States, the potential economic impact of this screwworm would be to the tune of about $100 billion to our U.S. livestock industries, right? Because it's not species specific. Mexico and Central America have reported over 1,000 human cases as well. So it's a pretty nasty pest. FDA and EPA are actively working on approving, either through emergency use authorization or conditional approval, of drugs to treat and prevent New World screwworm. They just announced new ones last week, I believe. I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know what their names are. But those are gonna have some extra hurdles that we have to work through. Because they were approved under EPA's label, which, you know, many products in the vet space are under as a pesticide. However, we'd have to potentially contemplate maybe being a certified applicator of this pesticide, since it's not fully licensed in the United States. I believe it's a Wanco product being brought in from Brazil, maybe. And so that would require potentially additional regulators at the state chemist's office, the pesticide review board, that veterinarians might have to then get licensed as a pesticide applicator in order to apply that product. We're still trying to figure that out. We just got the news that this was even a thing last week. So we're trying to understand what that looks like at the state level. Though the federal government has kind of allowed it will be allowing it into the country. It's under very specific use cases, but yeah. So the website, screwworm.gov, actually is kept pretty up to date as different drugs are approved. So I encourage folks to do that. We're also internally looking at what our response efforts would look like. So USDA issues a playbook. That playbook is for state regulators to try to remain as consistent as possible across states, with the understanding that there will be nuance everywhere. One of the challenges that we foresee that is contemplated in the playbook is that, I still don't know how to do this, to be quite honest, would be that if we were to have a detection in Indiana of New World screwworm, we'd really need to establish a infestation zone. That infestation zone would be 20-kilometer radius circle. At that point, we're really, and this would be for all livestock species, not one in particular, not just, you know, the impacted one. But once we get to 20K, we're really at the county level. So we're trying to figure out how we would potentially need to quarantine every livestock premises in a county. Because the 20K is set off of the radius of how far this fly can go. So we're still trying to figure that out, because that wouldn't be an easy lift. Honestly, Texas is doing a lot of the lifting in this because they're the highest risk right now. Florida has actually preemptively put in control measures against Texas. And so they are, it's more about, so they've already put movement restrictions for certain counties in Texas, because those counties are just in proximity to the Mexico detection. Right, so they're already starting to put restrictions in place against some counties in Texas. The main thing with Florida and Texas, especially, is they have their environment is most supportive and conducive to this fly, so it can actually, it's the greatest chance of it overwintering is there. Once you get up to Indiana, you know, it's the likelihood of it overwintering is nearly zero. So while we could have a detection, we could be impacted, we could even have local spread that was an introduction. The most likely case would be an animal moving in with the larva already on it. But because this fly in its life cycle requires soil, soil temperature matters, and so it likely would not be able to overwinter kind of, you know, north of that Kentucky, Tennessee line. So that's one that we want to keep on top of our radar, because I think where we're at as a country, you know, in battling avian influenza since 2022, most states, and certainly not the federal government, were not prepared or structured to handle more than one large-scale animal health emergency, right? So we have HiPath, we're putting a lot of resources in HiPath, we're doing HiPath. We kind of got thrown HiPath and dairy cattle. That was similar enough that we could understand what that looked like, but to do that, all of that and New World screwworm it's not going to be pretty, which is probably where the $100 billion impact comes, right? Because it's not something we have a lot of familiarity with. You know, we talk about our guidance documents that we have in the HiPath space. You know, we have the red book, which would be kind of similar to the playbook, but that's a 250-page document. And then outside of the red book for HiPath, we have over 75 guidance documents that tell us step by step what to do in that whole process. So that would have to be treated. So all of that to say that there's a lot of, it will be very rocky. If you do see the headline that there was a detection of screwworm in the United States, but you know, the states will continue to work in the preparedness efforts as much as we can, and then to take action if there is that detection. So it's they are actively releasing sterile flies in the US now. They have not done that in a really long time. Sterile flies do have fluorescent in them, so you can visually see that it is not a wild type fly. But as a reminder, the wild type flies and the sterile flies only breed once. So the thought is if they have an unsuccessful mating, then we'll be decreasing the population in those areas of concern. So
if we see a fluorescing fly, don't kill it.
yeah, don't kill it. Let it be. Let it be. We do treat a suspicion of New World screwworm, though, as a foreign animal disease investigation. So give us a call. We will work to, in the short term, if you can get a picture of it, get us a picture of it. Or we can get a sample and we can get that submitted to entomologists for their identification. So
Is that telehealth?
Teleconsult? The answer is probably yes.
What is it telling us?
Don't know.
Tele-advice. So those are the high points. Obviously, we, as an agency, right, we are still awaiting budget instructions, but we'll be entering into a budget year at the General Assembly. That session should start early January, so we are still awaiting what that looks like. But we're really excited to get the Brittany spot backfilled and hired with Courtney. I think that'll be an incredible help. And yeah, happy to take any questions you might have on any other random disease we might deal with. Does it feel like we've gotten a potpourri lately?
Just a reminder that I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay on as the director. Courtney will be the assistant director and doing all of the application, license, answering the phone, answering questions about licenses, and issuing all the licenses. I'll probably keep the litigation for now and stay on as the board director. So.
I think the two of you taking a reduction in your salaries to be able to pay her is a wonderful thing. That's very generous.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Kyle, do you have an estimate of the financial impact that HiPath has costed you?
Oh, that's a good question. Not easily. A lot.
I was just curious, we have an estimate for the screwworm.
Yeah. The challenge we have right now is since October, we're dealing with a lot smaller farms, right? And so since October, I'll say only have depopulated, I think we're probably right at 1.8, 1.9 million birds. It's still a lot of birds. However, when we look at our incident last spring of 2025, where we only had 27 cases, we still depopulated like 8.3 million birds, and there's 27 cases. So it's that kind of, these are definitely smaller flocks in northern Indiana. So that doesn't mean the impact's any less, right? But on the pure metric of birds, it would be. So, yeah. we're over it. Yeah. So the virus is burning out. We're trying really hard not to burn out with it. So.
From an investment standpoint for those folks that own those farms, I mean, is there any kind of insurance against that type of thing, or is that just
Yeah.
so sorry type of thing?
So the way the money works, so USDA does pay in this space. So what they pay for is they pay for, at the time of reporting, the number of birds that are still living. They don't pay for dead birds. And fortunately or unfortunately, so high path kills birds very rapidly. That actually incentivizes early reporting, right? So they pay for live birds, that's one payment. The next payment is for the depopulation and disposal of those birds. So they'll basically, they can do that a few different ways, but the goal isn't that the producer makes money. The goal is that they just kind of break even and can hold. Then they also get a separate payment for the cleaning and disinfection of the barn. So the remediation of the event, as well as the impacted birds, get paid for with the goal of that's enough money to offset their costs, cover their costs, and potentially be a little bit ahead, but not nearly as ahead as if the birds were alive and in function, right? So they can potentially maintain their barn payments as they go through. So those are the three streams that USDA does, and that is the only way through. So we actually do not. So we don't depopulate birds until they're owned by the government, right? So then they're our possession, and then we depopulate them. So it's a very methodical process that happens, unfortunately, a lot of nights because test results typically come in at 4. So test results. So ADDL is running, anywhere between 1 and 300 samples a day, 6 days a week. They have Saturdays off, but that's Sunday through Friday. We've actually hired a courier service that drives that 6 days a week from Northeast Indiana down to the lab, which is not cheap at all. And they, but those test results, a lot of them are for permitted movement, right? So if I want to move my birds to slaughter today, I had to sample the birds both yesterday and today. And so if I want to move them tonight, I have to sample them today because that test result is only good for 24 hours, right? So I test the birds. So a lot of folks, they go out, they're sampling birds at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then they get them to the courier by 8 a.m., which gets them down to Purdue by 11 a.m. That's their cutoff for same-day results. And so they then run them, and by 3 or the main workload, I won't say the main, a time-consuming part of that is the accessioning part, just getting all these tubes in. And then they run those PCR tests. They result out starting around 3 to 4 p.m. And then that company has, from the time those results come out until midnight, to do whatever they need to do, either move birds to slaughter, move eggs off the site, whatever that might be. But what that also means is that 3 to 4 p.m. is when we get any positives for the day, right? So we get those, and then we send a separate crew out to then, because one of our veterinarians has to monitor the depopulation of the birds, even though the company is actively doing the depopulation process. And so we monitor that depopulation. And the peak we had back in October, which let's not get there again, was up to six farms in one day were positive. So we're sending people in different directions to try to meet that requirement. So it's a lot of moving parts. The density is really the challenge they have up there. It's a density of poultry farms that truly is nowhere else in the country. And when we're familiar with poultry farm densities, oftentimes in Indiana, we think of Southwest Indiana, we think of East Central Indiana. That's about 60 farms per 6 mile radius, right? So about 60 farms. Northern Indiana is 5 times the density. So we can draw our most dense circle in a 6.2 mile radius is 300 commercial poultry farms within a 6.2 mile radius circle. So the surveillance that's occurring, and obviously you can overlap in so many different ways. And all of those farms have to, whether they're moving or not, have to go through sampling every 5 days just to ensure the virus isn't there. And so we're surveying, we have, I think, at one point, we were probably up to 550 farms under quarantine just in those 2 counties. So knowing who's quarantined and not is also a challenge. It's easier to assume they all are, though, up there. But I mean, literally one farm, one circle, it had 290 commercial poultry operations in one circle. So, not often. Not often. So.
It's hard to imagine anybody's clean in that circle.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really tough. And that's where the thing is there's so many different moving risk factors. It's hard for us to say, do this, not that. Right. Because, you know, with the Amish community and their cultural norms, right, they very much value the togetherness of it, right? So they visit each other all the time. And so the other practice, which is the fact that they don't have churches and churches are actually in their houses, another risk factor, right? So you're bringing these congregations together of about 30 families into a house that could have a commercial poultry barn on the same property, right? And I can't tell them to not go to church, but how do we kind of manage that conversation? And up there, because it's, again, the church size is based on how many families can fit in the smallest house physically in the congregation, and when they can no longer fit, they split that congregation into separate congregations. So there's around 210 congregations in Elkhart and Lagrange County. We each are kind of ran by a bishop, and then there's a steering committee of bishops that then help equilibrate kind of the rule, because the bishop sets the rules of their community, their congregation, and the steering committee tries to equilibrate them across communities so that you don't have one bishop saying those rules don't count here, and then you start getting these influxes of people moving rapidly because they want to be in a bishop that has lax rules. It's just a different dynamic that like you have to like immerse ourselves in to understand like how best to work with the Amish. And fortunately, we work with them often across species, and we have those relationships. But they are very collaborative. But we have to understand their practices so we can help inform what modalities might be protective in keeping the virus out.
So do your new hires, your new employees, do they have to take like Amish 101 or something? Or?
It's actually really funny you say that because we've been considering putting one together, like an actual course for it, because it is so much of what we do. I call it in the 30,000 foot view is the 4 Ds of Amish. So they raise dogs, deer, dairy, and ducks in Indiana, and we regulate all of them, right? And so, yes, and so like I have a few default people that I reach out to, and they're used to my really dumb questions because I'm like, help me out. Like, I don't know what is this norm versus this norm, or what does that mean, or those types of things. So, but yeah, it's really interesting. It's also incredibly frustrating because you can't provide solutions, right? You grasp for solutions, and you're just like, I don't know what else to do. I don't. So that's the challenge.
Thank you for your report.
Okay. Moving on, old business, new business. We have an addition to the new business. We need to consider a nomination for the nominating committee associated with the AAPSB. And I would like to nominate our own Brittany McMahon to that nominating committee.
Do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
Okay. Do you want to discuss that position at all?
We already have motion on the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, let's vote on it then. And then she can tell us what it is she's going to hopefully be able to do. And let's do a roll call.
I would still do the roll call, but I think Natalie had to set up.
Okay. Stephen Sunbury.
I,
Kelly Peelman.
Aye.
Tracy Gillespie.
Aye.
Natalie's not with us. And Mindy Anderson. And myself, I as well.
Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate that very much.
all right.
So the AAVSB has a full board of directors and there are other positions for the international community. I don't remember the name of it. But it has to do with the NAPLE exam and getting folks on that committee to advise for creating test questions, stuff like that. And so other than the board of directors, there are the 2 or 3 positions and that aren't on the board of directors, but they have to be elected by that full body at the annual meeting. And one of them is the nominating committee. And the nominating committee is the group of folks who basically organizes all of the applications for the board of directors nominations and the nominating committee nomination and the NAPLE nomination. And so that's what I would be doing is, so next year for the 2027 meeting, if I'm nominated, or I'm nominated now, but if I'm elected to that position, then I would be working with the group to facilitate all the nominations for the 2027 annual meeting.
And does that then opens you up to potentially other committees or other things
Yes.
that you can do?
Yes, so as a board director for a member board, there are other committees that I can volunteer for. And I've been asked to volunteer for one of the committees, but I can't do that until I'm already in another position. I've already volunteered for another position. So this is one of them that makes me eligible for that as well. But the
So good
nominating,
luck being selected.
Can I ask you a question about the VTNE? Score reporting, if you guys talked about it at ABSD. I don't know if you guys would have talked about this, but we can no longer, there's no way for our program to know who passed or even took the VTNE. Like, we are now being required to report our VTNE score.
just call me. Well, I can disclose that information for the people who select Indiana.
Okay.
Because they don't, and for the NAVLE as well, they don't have to select a state to report to.
And happily, you can select, like, please report my scores back to my institution.
But
VTNE doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So I can't see, like, I'm being required to report my scores, like all the tech programs are, but I don't know if, and there's been a history where the program has received scores for students that weren't theirs. So I have no way of saying all of these students were mine, or more importantly, these students that didn't pass, aren't mine. So there used to be a backdoor, I'm told, to be able to see who registered for the exam, but now there's no way to verify even our list of students that are being reported, if that makes sense.
we can talk offline about more details about the information you have and don't have right now. But if we find out later that that's something that the AABSB, if you think that they should be offering to the schools, you guys could propose a resolution. But you'd have to do that. Or even 2027, I'm not exactly sure when the deadline for that is.
Moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we need to also elect our officers. Again. How do you propose that we accomplish that?
Well, we need a motion to nominate the chairperson.
I would nominate Jerry as chairperson.
Okay.
And we vote on it.
Do we have other, this one first, or do we have other nominations from the floor? If there
The
are
vice chair.
others? What's that?
Vice chair on the statute. too.
No, I knew that. I meant other nominations for chairperson.
Anybody want to nominate anybody else? I think it's sufficient.
Okay, fine. All right. Let's go ahead and vote on that. Stephen Sunbury.
Aye.
Kelly Peelman.
Aye.
Tracy Gillespie.
Aye.
And Mindy Anderson. I'm going to abstain.
No, we should reject it.
Vote nay? No? Okay, aye.
For some reason, you want to make sure everybody had a chance this time.
That's exactly right. Just trying to make sure.
Well, our vice chair is no longer on the board. We had to do.
I understand. I'd entertain a motion for someone for the vice chair position.
I nominate Steve Sunbury to the vice chair position.
Ooh, I second that. All right. Any other nominations from the floor? Hearing none. Let's roll call that. I vote aye. Kelly Peelman.
Aye.
Tracy Gillespie.
Aye.
And Mindy Anderson.
And
Congratulations.
Steve? Did Steve vote?
Do you want to vote for yourself? Steve Sunbury. He said aye. He went, aye,
Yay.
How many settlement conferences am I gonna have to go to? All right. Any other business to be brought before the board?
Just the July meeting is July 30th. Is that still okay with everybody?
I think it's okay for me. Any concerns from anybody on that?
Let's not make it a long one.
Okay.
I have a rehearsal dinner for a wedding that night. Not for me.
Well, you can leave.
Thursday.
Not direct family, indirect family.
You're a fine leader, honest woman. Beautiful. It's about time.
If you have to leave,
I should be fine.
then yeah.
I'll just go from here to Carmel, so. I guess I'm part way there. Better a
Oh.
lot of the way. From your neck of the woods, you're a long way there.
And
So it's a great day to have a board meeting.
But now my wife's gonna drive herself and she's not gonna like that.
Are we concluded?
yes, I think we are. Meeting adjourned. Need to let Natalie know I miss not seeing